Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm, and you are watching first part of What If Kid Naruto Goes Insane with a Twist. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
As the man entered the room, the big metal door swung open, and he was followed by a woman and another man wearing masks. He had visited this place frequently, and in fact, he had approved its construction. He was still shivering. The walls, which were once white, were now covered in lengthy lines of text and odd symbols that were too difficult to read and too small to decode. They moved into the middle of the room, where a young boy of no older than 7 was lying on a bare 2-meter square patch of furniture. Naruto.kun. The boy's face did not lift, but his head jerked. The older man scowled, preparing to say hello again. The boy, however, abruptly raised his head and flashed a menacing smile. Yes? The older man flinched at the young boy's tone of purposeful sweetness. Only a moment later did he start talking again. I have convinced the council to allow you entry into the Shinobi Academy. You'll be trained in the ways of. He was interrupted by the young boy. And why should I go there? I know all there is to know. All there is to know about being a killer. I'm the all-powerful 9-tailed demon fox. I killed your foolish leader, the blondie. Then the little boy burst out laughing. As a result, the older man's entourage became enraged at the boy's disdain for both their current and former leaders. The elderly man scowled. Via the boy's ceaseless laughter, he resumed his speech. You would be able to leave this place, make friends, and interact with people your own age. The boy stopped laughing and squinted, one eye nearly popping out of its socket as he stared at the older man. What is the catch? Hee. The elderly man smiled at his discovery. You must act appropriately, refrain from killing people, and refrain from causing excessive property damage, and... Though his face was unreadable, the boy's ears were perked up, and the older man took this as a positive sign and went on. And you'll have to take your medication. The room fell into a deadly silence, and the older man started to sweat, worried that his attempt at compromise had been unsuccessful and that his best friend's legacy was destined to rot and die in a sealed, white room. Medications? Do you mean the things that make me happy, calm, and submissive? The boy appeared to consider his predicament for a moment, and then he burst out laughing once more, louder, and with a hint of malice. All right. There was a sigh from the older man. As he stepped through the doorway into what he started to believe was a torture chamber, Amino Iruka sighed. He had to deal with these children every day, and each day brought with it a host of new issues. He wondered what the day would bring. Quiet down, class. With a sigh, Iruka stumbled into the middle of the classroom, his head starting to hurt from the constant commotion. To his surprise, it seemed that Sakura and Ino were fighting over Sasuke once more. As one might assume, given that he yelled at the class every single day, Amino Iruka disliked yelling. However, he was a victim of his own circumstances, and it wasn't his fault that his students enjoyed being yelled at. They misbehaved at every opportunity, constantly trying to outdo one another. Shut up, you flaming brats. That was successful. Iruka cleared his throat as he started, but teachers also get bored, which the students are unaware of. It's not fun to repeat your lessons to younger versions of yourself, and the only benefit they receive from it is the amazing paychecks they receive at the end of each month. Thus, Iruka's mind wandered, and he started noting who was causing trouble and who wasn't, based on his observations. Sakura, noisy. Ino, noisy. Sasuke, quiet, but cause of noise. Shikamaru, eternally sleepy. Choji, eating in class. Kiba, noisy. Shino, quiet. Hinata, quiet. Naruto. That's where he stopped. Uzumaki Naruto was the quietest student in the class. Shino would say something once every week, but Naruto had never said a word. Iruka had taught him for 3 years, but he had never heard his voice because he was never asked to answer questions, which made Iruka feel guilty. Despite this, Naruto had consistently outperformed the written tests, demonstrating that he was, in a sense, a genius. Although Naruto had amazing chakra reserves, he was terrible at hand, seals and chakra control. A simple bunshin would explode from the excess chakra pumped into it. This was a bunshin, not a cage bunshin, but a simple academy-level bunshin. And he had a peculiar habit of popping pills at the most odd times. Iruka initially thought they were candy, but after noticing that Naruto simply swallowed them, he assumed they were soldier pills, which would account for his excessive chakra. However, there was no chakra spike. He finally thought they were drugs, though, and went to ask the third about them because, after all, he had put Naruto in the academy, so he must know something about the pills. The third simply grinned and told him to leave Naruto alone. So he did. Even though he claimed to be happier not having to deal with the Kyuubi, he couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor boy. Naruto. Iruka went on. The sound of his name and the attention he was receiving from the rest of the class caused the blonde boy's eyes to widen. How would you describe the chakra concept? After swallowing one of his pills, Naruto stood up, his black pants and white shirt rustling, and spoke in a rough, shaky voice that had clearly seen little use. Naruto paused for a moment before answering. Chakra is the essence of all living things. It functions similarly to energy, if not exactly the same way. It is used for a variety of purposes, including for Jesus. Chakra is acquired through training and other demanding activities, and it also appears to refuel while we sleep. There, Naruto paused, and his face twisted, his lips lifting into a murderous smile that vanished, and for a moment, as he swallowed another pill, his face was once more his own. He then recovered his composure. There are other uses for chakra. When it is directed into a particular area of the body's natural chakra coils are infused, giving that area almost superhuman strength or speed. If control is high enough, chakra can also be used as a solid. If it is infused with a good scope of the injuries, it can be used to heal. Incorporating chakra into plants can improve their growth complex and accelerate their growth. It can also be used for a variety of other purposes, such as... There, Iruka stopped him, his eyes wide with the amount of information that had been presented. The class fell silent, and Naruto sat down, taking another of his pills right away. A student held up his hand. What are coils of chakra? Iruka read from a sheet of paper to explain the format of the genin exam, which he announced to the students after class. The test would usually be split into 3 different parts: the written, the physical and the technique-oriented. Iruka continued, and the class listened carefully. However, it has been noted that this year, the class has had extremely high written test scores, on average, because of Naruto, he quietly stated, and the written exam will be screened out to save time and costs. While some students pumped their arms and others appeared proud, probably thinking they were smart, Naruto's face lowered and he started to frown. Due to last year's accidents, the physical examinations will also be eliminated. Hyuga Neji's use of the Juken fighting style to obtain an apparent unfair advantage may be familiar to some of you. Hinata winced. The jutsu test is the next step. People, don't worry. We will only ask you to practice random academy level jutsu, not any high level techniques. Substitute, Bunshin. Many of the students, particularly Sakura, the second best, wanted to ask Naruto about his knowledge as class was dismissed, but Naruto had simply walked out the door, too preoccupied with his own thoughts to respond to any questions, much less complex ones. As everyone got ready for their big test, the following day drew near quickly. Iruka and Mizuki sat behind tables at the front of the class, and there was an awkward silence as the students took their seats in a row. The test started when the first name was called. Soon, Naruto was at the top of the waiting list, twitching and making nervous gestures, unable to control his chakras well enough to make a good Bunshin if his life depended on it, and the third had been heavily relying on him as well. Uzumaki Naruto. After taking a few pills out of his pocket, Naruto's head jerked and he got up from his seat. Iruka's gaze followed Naruto into the room and remained fixed on him while Mizuki cleared his throat and started to explain. You, Naruto, are the candidate, and you have to use a total of 3 jutsu. According to their own knowledge, the first one must be a jutsu, that is, one that we did not teach you. The henge technique, which involves changing into one of the instructors, must be demonstrated in the second. The application of the Bunshin technique would be the third and last test. It is necessary to make 3 flawless clones and hold them for longer than 10 seconds. You have 10 minutes to complete all 3 tasks, and whether or not your personal technique is successful, the time limit will start. Naruto nodded and appeared to enter a state of deep meditation for a brief moment before yelling, Hiraishin no Jutsu, and hurling a kunai into a wall 5 meters away. He arrived at the kunai in a flash. How could this boy perform such an advanced jutsu? He wasn't even a genin yet. Iruka and Mizuki were clearly in disbelief. Satisfied with his demonstration, Naruto went on to perform. Heng! He yelled, changing into an exact replica of Iruka. With another yell, he changed into a replica of Mizuki. Both teachers nodded, their jaws still dropped by the Hiraishin. After a brief pause, Naruto exclaimed, Bunshin no Jutsu, as 3 flawless replicas materialized behind him, only to burst into a breathtaking display of blue fireworks a moment later. After what seemed like an eternity of silence as the smoke cleared, Iruka spoke. Naruto, you fail. Mizuki raised her voice as Naruto's face contorted with grief. Iruka demonstrated amazing jutsu and successfully defeated the henge. We can't simply. Iruka cut in. No, Mizuki. Regulations are regulations. I sincerely apologize, Naruto. Iruka felt awful as Naruto simply nodded, left, and swallowed a pill. As he watched his classmates leave the academy and meet their parents, Naruto sat on his favorite swing, rocking back and forth, so engrossed in the moment that he was taken aback when Mizuki approached him from behind and tousled his hair. I apologize, Naruto. I am powerless. I attempted to persuade Iruka, but... Mizuki grinned and went on, while Naruto just waved it away. Hi, Naruto. I might be able to assist you in some way. You know, there's another route to promotion. Don't tell anyone, okay? Mizuki's smile widened as Naruto turned to face her. As he slipped through the door, Naruto wondered why there had been so many wards in the Hokage Tower, but he didn't give it much thought because he was focused on getting the Forbidden Scroll, and the sheer number of traps was enough to keep him focused. However, he wondered if someone had told the Hokage that he had arrived. He glanced at his map, then looked through the darkness, thinking straight ahead, but he was unaware that he was being watched. He had nearly had a heart attack when he saw Naruto using the Hiraishin to get past some traps. Iruka had told him about an intruder, but he had no idea that it would be Naruto. The third Hokage marveled at Naruto's skill, avoiding most of his traps with such ease and disarming others with such skill. He watched, looking into his crystal ball, as Naruto maneuvered his wave past numerous more traps and into the room of relics. After wiping perspiration from his brow, Naruto entered the relic room, where he had never executed so many Hiraishin. Appreciative of his chakra reserves, he looked around the room for any more traps but couldn't find any. He then moved to the center of the room and eyed the Forbidden Scroll, but as he lifted it, he noticed something else. When Naruto got close to the clearing, he saw Mizuki standing there frowning. Naruto slowed down until he was walking and entered the clearing, where Mizuki saw him right away and smiled. Naruto, what took you? Naruto gave him a questioning glance. I took a moment to study a jutsu technique from the scroll. That's what you said. Mizuki interrupted him. Yes, indeed. Give me the scroll now. Because you've acquired jutsu. I must give it back. After pausing, Naruto started to pass the scroll over when. Naruto. No. Iruka rushed onto the scene, grabbed Naruto, and stepped aside, causing Mizuki to scowl as he withdrew a kunai. After rolling to one side and shaking out of Iruka's hold, Naruto turned to face Iruka in confusion. Mizuki. Sensei said that I could be a genin if I learned a jutsu from this scroll. Iruka scowled before turning to face Mizuki. Mizuki. Is the scroll being stolen? Then Mizuki burst out laughing. It was very simple to trick the Kyuubi brat. For some ridiculous reason, he is desperate to become a shinobi in order to keep the third happy. Haha. After pausing for a moment to think, Mizuki resumed his tirade. Did you know, Naruto, why no one likes you when you leave the academy? Iruka shouted quickly, his eyes widening. Mizuki, no. The law of the third. Mizuki's voice became extremely loud as he laughed even harder. You are the Kyuubi, Naruto. Naruto's face was expressionless when Iruka looked at it, and Mizuki had also looked at it, wanting to enjoy the broken expression that would undoubtedly appear. Naruto looked around the clearing as there was a pause, and Mizuki shook from his reverie. Don't you mind? Kyuubi slime, damn it. Without you, I believe the world would be a better place. After throwing his kunai at Iruka, Mizuki used the opportunity to unleash a Fuma Shuriken, which he then hurled at Naruto, hitting Iruka's exposed back. Naruto's eyes widened as Iruka fell to his right. Mizuki drew a kunai and approached Naruto, who he believed was paralyzed with fear, slowly while laughing. With a blank expression on his face, Naruto stood and gazed directly at Mizuki before drawing a kunai. When Mizuki was within 5 feet of him, Naruto's smile turned into a chuckle, which then turned into a stream of humorless laughter. After a moment of shock, Mizuki froze, wondering if the boy had gone insane. Naruto stopped laughing and met Mizuki's gaze, and Mizuki, no longer confused, lunged at Naruto. You fucking freak, die. When Mizuki felt a huge blow to the side of his head, his smile turned to a frown, and he flew into a nearby tree, splintering the trunk with a sickening crunch. He sat there for a moment, more stunned than hurt, and only looked up when he heard Naruto's gentle footsteps approaching. Naruto seemed to be talking to himself, and it seemed to be a humorous conversation because Naruto was giggling a lot at certain points. It wasn't until he got close to Mizuki that his words made sense. Do I need to rip his lungs out? Brain juice looks good against a tree backdrop, so maybe his heart would be a good place to start. Throat? Hee. Mizuki trembled as Naruto walked toward his lifeless body, not because of the words, but rather because of the tone in which they were spoken. Naruto was excited, aching to kill, and his tone suggested that he would greatly relish his premature death. Mizuki tried to move, but he was stuck in place, sniffling and on the verge of tears. Mizuki sighed with great relief as Naruto dropped his kunai, but he could still see murderous intent in Naruto's eyes. Naruto frowned and started talking again. The answer is no, I can't use a kunai to kill him. If I want his intestines removed, it can't cut well enough. Subsequently, Naruto reached into his pocket and took out a small rod that was adorned with intricate carvings. After considering the rod for a moment, he eyed and grasped it. From its hilt emerged a blade of condensed lighting, which was so thin at the edge that it only showed a tiny flicker. The blunt end of the rod was long and thin, and when it was fully extended, it appeared to be as long as Naruto herself. Mizuki recognized the object and almost screamed. Raijin, the Nidame Hokages. Naruto spoke with a sadistic smile. Oh, are you aware of it? All right, let's just start ripping. Hee. A hand seized Naruto's as he raised the weapon, and he spun around angrily to meet his attacker's eyes. Old man, a group of Anbu were helping Iruka up behind the third Hokage, who was standing behind Naruto with one hand behind his back and the other gripping his arm. I shouldn't have allowed Iruka to come alone. Naruto then fell to the ground after the third sliced him across the neck. As soon as Naruto awoke in a hospital bed, he sat up and saw the third Hokage seated in a chair beside his bed. I lost control again, didn't I? The third merely smoked his pipe and turned to face Naruto. He paused for a moment before grinning and starting to talk. Don't worry, Naruto. After that, the third got up and moved to Naruto's bedside, setting two objects on the bed before stopping at the door. Use them well. Then he left. After a prolonged period of staring at the door, Naruto turned to face the two presents placed at his bedside, his eyes widening as he mentioned the Raijin sword used by the Nidame and a forehead protector bearing the leaf symbol. Naruto grinned as he glanced back at the door. The third Hokage entered his office, providing some respite from the absurdity that Naruto's actions had sparked. Council members wanting to be put to death, Anbu asking for assassination assignments, having to decline more than 120 missions demanding the immediate annihilation of the Kyuubi brat. The recent incident had been widely publicized by a talkative Kyuubi, hating Anbu who had been on the scene, and many saw this as the ideal opportunity to be heroes. It wasn't that they felt sorry for Mizuki. Rather, it was more of a grab whatever chance you have to get rid of a pain in your side sort of thing. After all, if Konaha's most feared enemy disappeared from the map, who would be upset? With a sigh, the third turned his chair so that it was facing the window. I wonder how Naruto's doing with his new team. One might wonder why they would want anyone other than Sakura and Ino, but the reason for this would be that, despite being two of the most attractive people in the class, they had characteristics that weren't as attractive. The students filed into the classroom, making a lot of noise as they went. They were getting posted into their teams today. Who wouldn't be excited? The girls hoped for Sasuke, and the boys hoped for someone who wasn't Sakura or Ino. Kiba, stop talking. Sasuke isn't gay, seative, as demonstrated by that outstanding demonstration of enthusiasm. But when a particular student entered the room, the commotion stopped. The newcomer was the center of attention, and many people appeared to be terrified of him. It seems that the adults weren't the only ones who heard about Naruto's bloodlust. Under the class's watchful eyes, Naruto ascended the stairs and took his customary seat. He swallowed another of his signature pills with trepidation, and he kept doing so every minute or so until the majority of the students were looking away. Though some spoke in whispers and others in more subdued tones, the class resumed their discussions. During their conversations, some students gestured to Naruto, making the unfortunate young man wonder what they were discussing and if it worried him. As soon as Iruka walked in, the conversation suddenly stopped again. After giving Naruto a big smile, Iruka walked to the middle of the room, where he stayed, organizing his notes and looking through some papers on a clipboard before putting them down and nearly bursting with the perfect silence he was witnessing. Iruka had wanted to savor it for much longer than the allotted time before someone, probably Kiba or the Sasuke Club, yelled at him to start. With a sigh, Iruka grabbed a little piece of paper and started talking while glancing at the pupils. I'm sure you all know what we're here to do today. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your promotions to genin. You are, as of today, legal members of Konaha's ninja community. And, with that in mind, I expect you to behave as such, and not dishonor the name and reputation of our fair country." Iruka inhaled deeply and suppressed a laugh when he saw some of the pupils holding their breath. Now, on to the distribution of genin into their allotted teams. As you should already know, ninja teams are comprised of 3 genin or chunin under a single junin instructor. The teams have been decided by the village council, depending on your standing in terms of skill, and on how certain ninja combinations have functioned before. Iruka looked around the room and rested on Ino, who had started using her hands to hold her head up, clearly aware of the meaning behind the last part of the sentence. Iruka grinned and allowed the tension to build before starting over. Naruto had been paying close attention and had pieced together a few teams over time using his understanding of Konaha's past and distribution records. Because of the viable options and the success of previous similar combinations, he had decided that a Yamanaka, an Akamichi, and a Nara would be combined. He had put together a tracking team, which included Hinata, whose Byakugan provided her with an enormous line of sight, Shino, whose natural symbiosis with his inconspicuous insects would grant great scouting potential, and Kiba, whose impeccable sense of smell would be perfect for such a job. However, he was still unsure of his placement partner. The sound of his name being called brought Iruka back into his mind. Uzumaki Naruto will be placed with Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. Your team will be classified under the denomination 7, and therefore, you are henceforth Team 7. After giving a loud cheer and sticking her tongue out to Ino and a few other girls, Sakura turned slowly to look at Naruto, who was swallowing another of his pills. Sakura was unaware that Naruto had taken notice of her staring and could see the fear in her eyes. He saw that look every day while strolling down the street from people much more significant and intimidating than Sakura, so how could he not have noticed it? How could he not, given that it was the only look he had received from those besides the Hokage and Iruka, and that the word, monster, had been ingrained in his memory? After frowning for a while, Naruto quickly grabbed a pill and swallowed it. Then he saw that Iruka had ceased speaking. To the chagrin of Naruto, who detested cigarettes, 2 adults strode into the room. One was a black-haired woman with bright red eyes wearing a costume resembling a bandage, and the other appeared to be a middle-aged man whose cigarette odor was strong enough to be detected from the back row. After looking at his clipboard, Iruka called for teams 8 and 10, who got up and started to advance. For the next 30 minutes or so, this process was repeated until only Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto were left, along with Iruka. In contrast to Sakura's most recent loud and enthusiastic declaration of love for Sasuke, which was disregarded like her previous ones, there seemed to be an overwhelming silence. Iruka broke the deafening silence by looking at his clipboard and then at a nearby clock before starting to speak. "Kids, I'm sorry, but I can't afford to wait any longer. Your instructor is Hitaki Kakashi, and, obviously, he's late. He has, white hair, I think, and has a mask on. Rather recognizable guy. Good luck, yeah." After giving the Team 7 a smile, Iruka left the room in complete silence once more. Our new group of brave warriors sat in silence for the next hour or so, Sakura playing with one of her gorgeous pink hairs, Sasuke brooding, and Naruto reading a book. A young boy rushed into the classroom, stared at the 3, yelled something understandable, and then ran out, breaking the silence. Once again there was silence. However, a white-haired head peeping in at around 2 hours later caught the attention of Team 7. "Are you guys, Team 7? As Team 7 sat on the balcony of the academy, Naruto shifted uneasily. In front of them sat their new sensei, one eye shaped like an upside-down rainbow and the other covered. Then Kakashi started talking. "Hello. Team 7 couldn't speak." Kakashi scowled. "How impolite. My first impression of you guys is, you're impolite. Bad start, people." After taking a pill, Naruto scowled. Then Kakashi started talking again. Let's start, with your likes, dislikes, dreams, goals." Sakura broke the silence after Naruto considered the question for a while. Sensei, if you're the sensei, why don't you start first?" After a moment of contemplation, Kakashi nodded. "Well, my name is Hitaki Kakashi, ERRM, I like, I dislike, dislike, and, I can't tell you my hopes and dreams." Silence fell. Naruto gave his temples a massage. Iruka had already told him his name, and that was all they had learned. Kakashi glanced around and saw that his introduction had not had much of an impact on anyone. After giving his head a scratch, he gestured toward Sakura. "You, pink-haired girl. Begin." After getting a nod, Sakura pointed to herself and began. She started by saying, "My name is Haruno Sakura, and I like," before blushing and turning to face Sasuke before continuing. She concluded by looking at Sasuke once more. "I detest insects and lizards, and my dream is to, hee." With a noticeable twitch, Kakashi signaled for Sasuke to follow. "My name is Sasuke. I don't feel like telling you what I like, and I dislike a lot of things, like my team, my current situation and how my future looks. My dream is to establish the Uchiha clan and to kill a certain man." Kakashi gave Naruto a nod as well. Naruto had listened to the introductions of his teammates with some irritation. In addition to being ambiguous, they didn't disclose anything previously known, with the possible exception of Sasuke's dream. Naruto made the decision that he would not divulge anything if they did not. That is, anything significant. He got up and started his introduction after popping a pill. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I like to read, and enjoy gardening, along with learning new techniques. I dislike killing, and death. I hope to meet with the third's expectations of me and become a good shinobi." Naruto took a pill as he sat down and avoided his teammates' gaze by looking down. Kakashi instantly started talking again. "How enlightening. Since today's your first day out, there are no missions, though I must urge you to come tomorrow morning to Training Ground 23 for your final test." Seeing three eyes staring at him questioningly, Kakashi casually carried on with his speech. "Only 9 of the 30.6 will go on to be genin, you know." Sasuke appeared stunned as Sakura gasped. Naruto just nodded without making any visible movements. Then Kakashi grinned and went on. "Call it survival training, if you will. Oh, and don't eat. It'll all just come out again. Bye." Naruto started to move first as Kakashi scattered. He grabbed his backpack and headed out. That night, Naruto lay in bed trying in vain to figure out what this so-called survival training was for. Then his thoughts shifted to his new teammates. He had concluded that Sakura's multiple unsuccessful attempts at more than 5 bunshin indicated that she possessed a comparatively small amount of chakra. But this also brought amazing chakra control. Before she was even a genin, he had witnessed her walk on a wall and was astounded by how effortlessly she managed to complete such a challenging task. In contrast, Sasuke possessed a lot of chakra and knew how to use it. However, his range of strategies was lacking, as evidenced by his somewhat reckless approach to handling situations. That is, a gukakyu. Next, Naruto grabbed a bottle off the side of his bed. He eyed it, got to his feet, and slipped it into one of the pockets of his planned outfit for the next day. Then he went back to his bed and fell asleep immediately. Naruto thought as he made his way to Training Ground 23, a semi-circular clearing encircled by trees, that the following morning would come swiftly. Prior to his arrival, he had researched his new teacher, Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja who used his surgically implanted Sharingan to copy nearly 1,000 jutsu. It seems that he only possessed one jutsu, which he had invented himself. The Reikari is a mysterious A-ranked skill. When Naruto saw Sakura, he popped a pill and walked toward the training area. Sakura turned around, taking in Naruto's new outfit with a startled gasp. He was dressed in what appeared to be a scale model of the Third's battle uniform, but he lacked a helmet and had a scarf covering his entire chest. Additionally, Naruto had on upper dot arm guards that resembled those of ancient samurai, albeit smaller and noticeably more compact. In addition to the leaf symbol engraved on his knee guards, gloves, and wrist guards, he wore a forehead protector on his head. With the exception of the dark gray armored sections, the entire ensemble was black. Additionally, Naruto's backside was covered by a flowing piece of cloth that extended over his legs until it partially covered them and reached his feet. There were several kunai, a small pole that Sakura hadn't noticed, and a lot of senbon on his belt. Sakura blushed at how cool Naruto appeared as she watched his form approach closer and closer before breaking off. Sakura's odd stare made Naruto uneasy, and her blushing didn't make it any better. He thought this had been a good time to try out this suit that he had had specially made for combat operations. In the end, Naruto decided to wait while eating an apple and relaxing by a tree. But when Sakura reminded him of Kakashi's advice, he almost dropped it. Naruto gazed at her a while. "You just told yourself my answer." Sakura had a perplexed expression. It was advice, not an order. After continuing to eat his apple, Naruto took one out of his pocket and offered it to Sakura, who was startled, before starting to speak in a tremulous voice. I think that I'll follow sensei's advice." With a nod, Naruto put the apple in his pocket. Shortly afterward, Sasuke showed up and regarded Naruto's apple with contempt. "Good ninja don't need to eat. After giving him a third eye-like glance, Naruto took a pill and then another. Ninja who don't eat are dead ninja. Sasuke scowled before leaving. Kakashi didn't show up until the sun was shining brightly in the sky. Sorry I'm late, guys, I had to go brush my teeth with the tail of a five-toed caterpillar for good luck, hee. Silence fell. Unfazed, Kakashi started to describe his test. Kakashi dangled two bells and said, "All right, then, genin. This is my test for you. You're to retrieve these two bells from my belt before the time runs out." Then Sakura raised her voice. "Why are there only two bells?" Kakashi replied with a smile, "Only two will pass." There was no sound from Team 7. They all three questioned whether he was kidding. With a smile, Kakashi took out an orange book. "You may begin." When the huge cloud of smoke dissipated, Naruto was the only person remaining. Kakashi gave his head a scratch. "For a guy who dresses so stealthily, you sure aren't trying to be stealthy. Lesson number 1 in the Ninja War, LD." When Kakashi saw that Naruto was not paying attention, he stopped. When Naruto reached the river that formed a semicircle around the clearing, he started setting kunai on the riverbanks after walking to each tree around it and inserting one from his belt or under his cloak into each one. He persisted in this odd behavior, which perplexed his instructor and teammates. The first tree he had mocked was the only one at which he stopped. Subsequently, he pivoted on his right foot and hurled a kunai towards Kakashi, who effortlessly caught it. Kakashi grinned before starting to talk in a disinterested manner. Lesson 2 of the Naruto materialized in front of Kakashi, swinging the Raijin in an overhead swing that would have split him in two, and Kakashi felt a powerful chakra surge. Kakashi was able to dodge and hit nothing with his own kunai. Kakashi barely avoided Naruto's sideways swing as he suddenly reappeared behind him. For a while, this sequence of events persisted, requiring Kakashi to dodge one slash before acting quickly to avoid another. But Sasuke watched in bewilderment up in the trees. All he could see was Kakashi, moving in an odd way and suddenly flashing yellow. Sakura was finding it more difficult to understand what Kakashi was doing. Kakashi, meanwhile, was gradually becoming aware of the method. He found it both familiar and far away. In an instant, he saw Naruto approaching him once more in a flash of yellow. As he momentarily lost focus and prepared for the impact, which never materialized, it all came back to him. He became aware that his bells were gone when he felt heat around his left waist. He swore and turned to see Naruto sitting beneath a tree, panting. After grinning, Naruto assisted in raising the bells. As Sakura emerged from the bushes and Sasuke leapt from the trees, Kakashi grimaced. "Naruto, you. Kakashi could not think of anything to say. Before, no genin had been able to get his bells back. Fail. Naruto's gaze expanded. Sasuke grinned. Sakura's mouth fell open. After a moment of looking oddly guilty, Kakashi started to explain. "You haven't understood the meaning of this exercise. The one who..." At the sound of laughter, Kakashi halted. It was soft, but there was still laughter. Naruto, who was grinning, was the source of it. A big smile that looked very dangerous. On Training Ground 23, there was an awful silence because everyone's attention was on Naruto. Even though he was laughing quietly, there was no mistaking the evil in his voice. He got up from his chair and stared directly into Kakashi's face. "I know what the damn reason for your test was." As Naruto went on, Kakashi crossed his arms and squinted. "Teamwork." Kakashi started talking without a look on his face. Knowing it and not acting on it is as good as not knowing at all. Once more, Naruto flashed his crazy grin. "Look around you, you great damn retard. I don't think you heard Maggot's little speech yesterday. And I hope you haven't forgotten Sakura's little intro either. Maybe if you didn't cover your Sharingan so much, you'd be able to see what really happened." Sasuke let out a gasp. "Sharingan, H. Hey," Naruto gave him a fierce look. "I'm not done, Maggot." Naruto would be in excruciating pain right now if appearances could kill, but Sasuke would also be in agony. Kakashi realized that Naruto was telling the truth. Even though they had been teammates for a long time, he knew that their conflicting interests and drastically different personalities would always undermine their ability to work as a team. "Naruto, you have to at least try. I mean, maybe you can work something out?" Naruto raised his hand. "Enough. I've taken enough of your nonsense. I get your bells, you fail me. You reneged on an agreement, and I don't like agreement breakers very much." As Naruto took the Raijin out of his belt, activated it, and assumed a stance, his smile grew. Sakura tried to soothe him, her eyes wide. Nah. Naruto, come on, we can just try again. Naruto glared at her to silence her. Kakashi prepared himself because he knew it was inevitable. Then he lifted his head covering, exposing a Sharingan in his left eye. Then, realizing the kunai's function as a conduit for the Hiraishin, he threw it away after Naruto threw it at him. With his blade appearing to be real lightning, Naruto rushed forward. However, as Kakashi's Sharingan busy scanned his movements, his swings brought nothing. After that, Naruto leapt back and performed a few hand seals. He exclaimed, "Kachiyose no Jutsu." As a human-sized falcon emerged in a cloud of smoke. As the bird charged forward, Kakashi's eyes widened and he sidestepped, only to be caught in Naruto's swing. Naruto swung back as Kakashi quickly rolled out of the way. The falcon, who was extremely swift and hurried in and out at regular intervals, was causing Kakashi problems. Naruto, meanwhile, was grinning and mouthing the words while he moved through a challenging series of hand seals. Daijigoku no Jutsu. When Kakashi sensed the ground trembling, he leapt to escape the quicksand's potential to engulf him. He saw more pools of quicksand form where he stepped as he ran off. Kakashi continued to evade, and he was able to climb a tree where the falcon was waiting. Naruto glanced to the side where his teammates were standing and watched Kakashi battle his falcon. He approached them. As he glanced at Sakura, he said, "Hello, nurse, what's a sweet thing like you doing all the way over here?" Sakura then recoiled and retreated a few steps as Naruto grinned maniacally at her. Sasuke prudently avoided close contact. Raikiri. Kakashi's arm went through Naruto's back into his chest while he was still grinning. "Ouchies," through a gurn, Naruto muttered. Kakashi frowned at Naruto and pulled his arm away. "Never turn your back to your opponent." Kakashi quickly stepped aside to avoid a falling Raijin, interrupting his tirade. As he spoke, Naruto swung while flashing a crazy smile. "You're going to die, Kakashi, die, hee ha 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 ha." Unable to do anything else, Kakashi frantically tried to parry Naruto's swings. Naruto's arms moved with such lightning fast speed that his sword was rarely even visible. In addition to causing massive amounts of electricity to flow through the Junin's body as a result of the Raijin, Naruto caused a significant gash on Kakashi's right upper arm when his defenses briefly failed. As Naruto approached him in slow, methodical steps, Kakashi fell to one knee and began to pant. His kunai was sliced in two by the Raijin after he threw it. Holding his right arm, Kakashi tried to stop the blood flow with a medical jutsu. "Kakashi, you can't escape. Might as well commit suicide and let me chop you up, right?" Kakashi made a hand seal and climbed out of his crouch. He turned to Naruto as his Raikiri surged forward. With a grimace, he lunged towards Naruto. As the two lightning blades collided in a massive shower of sparks and flowing electricity, followed by an explosion, Naruto smiled and swung the Raijin in a lazy arc. The smoke cleared, revealing Kakashi on the ground with his left hand heavily bleeding and Naruto standing very upright. "I've severed two of your fingers, Kakashi. No more hand seals for you, I'm afraid, hee." Kakashi scowled. Chakra could be used to reattach the fingers, but that wasn't the point at this moment. He made slow one-handed hand seals with his injured right hand. Kirigakure no Jutsu. Immediately, Kakashi used a different method. Suiryuden no Jutsu. 3 water dragons materialized and charged at Naruto, who ducked away. Futile, Kakashi. Trying to prolong your own suffering? Kakashi emerged behind Naruto, and his eyes grew wide. Kanashibari no Jutsu. Naruto was immobilized by a touch. Then Kakashi quickly produced a syringe and stabbed Naruto in the neck. After a moment, Naruto's eyes went blank, and he passed out. Kakashi let out a sigh. Thank the holiest of holies for the Hokage. Then he collapsed. Naruto awoke to a scene he was accustomed to. It was nearly the same as the previous one. By his bedside, the third. "Naruto, you really have to stop doing this." With a scowl, Naruto fell back onto his bed. A week later, Team 7 assembled at the designated meeting spot. Sasuke gave Naruto angry looks, while Sakura gave him terrified looks. He took another of his pills and walked nervously past. After nearly an hour of intense silence between the three, Kakashi arrived with his left hand bandaged and his right arm in a cast, along with numerous other bandages covering his bruised body. He smiled broadly at the team as he walked up. "I know I said you all failed, and you probably would fail. I've decided to give you guys a chance at ninjahood. After all, what would such talents be used for if scorned, right?" Sakura cheered and Sasuke grinned. but Naruto appeared dejected and kept his eyes fixed on Kakashi's bandaged body. Kakashi just grinned. "Don't worry about it, Naruto." Although Naruto nodded, his face remained unchanged. "Sensei, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lose control like that, and I'm sorry about your arm and hands." Kakashi dismissed it. "I've told you, Naruto. No harm done." Then Naruto looked at his teammates. Sakura appeared somewhat alarmed as Sasuke growled at him. "I'm sorry for ridding you of a week's training, and I'm sorry for scaring you, Sakura." There was a brief period of silence when Naruto arrived. Sakura's voice was tremulous before she spoke. No problem, Naruto. Just, don't go. Dangerous on us, okay." Naruto nodded, grinning. Sakura then gave a nod and returned the smile, albeit with more trembling. Sasuke just scowled while crossing his arms. Kakashi watched them for a long time. "Okay, people, I've got an exciting mission for you today. Search and destroy." As Sakura spoke, Team 7 appeared perplexed. "Destroy, what?" Kakashi grinned. "Rats." As the blonde boy trained, Kakashi gave Naruto a tired look. He was unable to comprehend it. In terms of skill and, perhaps more significantly, mannerisms, this Naruto was very different from the one he had fought. Naruto had been polite to him for the past month, apologizing numerous times, almost to the point of being annoying. Then again, he thought, nursing his right arm without realizing it. It was painful. Touching a spot that was still sore from the follow-up surgery made Kakashi wince. In the weeks that Naruto and his teammates had spent together, their relationship had significantly improved. He now realized that the D-ranked missions were a way to improve teamwork while simultaneously making money. Sakura now reacted favorably to his greetings and occasionally struck up a conversation with him on her own, primarily discussing her desire to be Sasuke's one true love. But Naruto didn't mind. Having someone to talk to was helpful. However, Naruto realized that he hadn't quite made the first impression he had hoped for, and that the terrified expression that occasionally flashed in her eyes would never be fixed. His efforts to become friends with Sasuke, however, had not been well received, but after Naruto's performance against Kakashi, Sasuke had started to look at him in an unsettling way. Frequently, the looks would last for nearly a minute before Naruto stopped feeling them. He had started to wonder if Sasuke had been offended by the remarks he had made in his insane state. Though they occasionally lingered in the back of his mind, Naruto also started to wonder if Sasuke was gay in an attempt to explain the odd staring. Although Naruto still felt that he needed to make amends, Kakashi had been very forgiving. Given Naruto's peculiar chakra-controlling disabilities, his teacher had been incredibly understanding. However, Naruto's taijutsu had significantly improved, particularly in his use of the Hiraishin. Because of Kakashi's extensive experience with that specific technique and his willingness to share it, Naruto assumed that Kakashi knew or had known someone who was fairly skilled at it. To the chagrin of the local environmentalists, who did not particularly like the mass destruction of their cherished forests, Naruto had also trained extensively with the Raijin. With a sigh, Naruto grabbed the cat by the nape of its neck. Not because he detested cats, but because he loved them. But because Tora was a clever cat and they had to use more clever strategies to get her each time. Having to get her every day was not a fun task. It was sleeping gas this time. Next time, what would it be? However, Naruto always left with a little more pocket money to spend, and Tora's owner was a pretty heavy tipper. Nevertheless, he was growing weary of these extremely dull D-rankers. Although a tiny voice in the back of his mind kept telling him that he had had enough chances, they were not improving his abilities and offered him no chances to try new things. While traversing the actual Konaha village, Team 7 spotted Team 10 making their way from the main administration building. With a big smile on her face, Ino, who was carrying a rather large wad of cash, saw them and started to walk their way. "Heya, forehead girl," Ino grinned as Sakura growled. "Wondering where I got this much cash?" With the exception of Kakashi, every member of Team 7 stared in wonder at the enormous quantity of Ryu in Ino's hand. Ino laughed. "Asuma. Sensei got us an easy C ranker, and, let me tell you this, it netted us one heck of a lot of dough." As she went on, Ino's eyes became slits. "It also officially puts us one level higher than your team in terms of skill. No offense. Sasuke-kun, I know you're better than them." Ino started to speak passionately about Sasuke's immense glory, but Sakura interrupted her. After all, as a fellow Sasuke fangirl, it was her responsibility. Sasuke could only be praised by her. Despite her internal laughter, Sakura asked her question. "What do you mean by that, piggy?" A vein pulsed on Ino's forehead, and her eyes flashed, but she used a lot of willpower to control the rage that was about to explode. As she said her next sentence, she even grinned. "Have you done any C-rank missions? Quiet?" Ino burst out laughing. "See you around, forehead girl." Kakashi felt 3 sets of eyes staring at him as Ino walked away, laughing gleefully, making people stare at her oddly. His favorite book, balanced precariously between 2 bandaged fingers, fell to the ground. He looked directly into his student's eyes. "What?" Sasuke cracked his knuckles and Sakura twitched. Nervously, Naruto looked between them. Kakashi let out a sigh. All right, I'll speak with the Hokage." As the group continued to march in the direction of the administration building, where their reward for Tora's safe return had yet to be claimed, Sakura grinned happily. The following day, Team 7, aside from Kakashi, met at what they had named their bridge. Like any other day, Sakura was trying to ask Sasuke out on a date while Naruto was reading a book about medical jutsu and its more well-known practitioners. The outcome was the same as on any other day: failure. As they waited, the sun rose high in the sky, and Sakura eagerly followed Naruto and Sasuke as they moved to the shade. At that moment, Kakashi decided to show up. He was on time, according to his clock, but everyone else's was 3 hours late. Kakashi grinned as he was about to make his usual excuse, but he stopped when Sakura didn't yell. Since she wouldn't lose to the blonde-haired pig. Bimbo, as she liked to call her, Sakura was more worried about the C-ranked mission request than she was about his tardiness, which was fortunate for him. In contrast to Team 7's daily routine of yellow D-rank scrolls, Kakashi smiled as he produced an orange mission scroll. Sakura let out a squeal but paused to pose a query. "What are we supposed to do?" As he clarified, Kakashi's smile wavered slightly. "It's an escort mission. We're to accompany a bridge builder to Wave Country so that he can oversee the completion of a new bridge. It's a rather simple little thing, and the pay's high enough. The guy's name is..." Kakashi was cut off when a grizzled, portly man carrying a bottle of sake stumbled and walked slowly onto the scene. "Tazuna, brats, and you'd do well to remember it." Tazuna eyed the members of Team 7, pausing for a moment to watch Naruto take a pill. Then he looked at Kakashi. "Are you sure these twits can guard me? They look weak and stupid, and the blonde kid takes medication." Kakashi eyed the bridge builder languidly. "They're the best genin Konaha has to offer." Tazuna gave a snort. "I'd better be getting what I paid for." With their backpacks in hand, Sakura in her tidy red cheongsam, Sasuke in his ninja shirt and shorts, and Naruto wearing a casual white shirt and long, loose black pants with his head protector neatly wrapped around his upper arm, Team 7 found themselves outside the village gates as the following day quickly came to life. Not long after they had gathered, Tazuna and Kakashi came closer. From there, they set out, Kakashi and Naruto leading the way while reading books of wildly disparate subjects. Sakura was reading a scroll from the bag while taking a break from her quest for Sasuke's love. Behind them all, apparently taking in the view, was Sasuke. They didn't make much progress, but that was to be expected from a group escorting a man who wasn't trained in the speed-traveling methods that most ninja use. A rather large puddle at the side of the road caught Naruto's attention as they were walking. Feeling Kakashi's hand on his shoulder, he nearly spoke but stopped. Kakashi fell oddly behind the group as they passed the puddle and proceeded to walk away from it, following Sasuke. 2 figures emerged from the smoke as an explosive exploded. There was a thin chain between them, and Kakashi was quickly encircled by it. As they pulled the chain and Kakashi exploded in a shower of blood, one of the figures yelled, "One down." The 2 started to approach Sasuke, so focused on their objective that they failed to notice a kunai that landed between them with a thunk. "2 down," was heard as the 2 figures tugged on their chains, causing them to stumble and lose their balance. The 2 enigmatic attackers from Team 7 exchanged glances before focusing on the broken pieces of chain lying on the ground in front of Sasuke. They then advanced on a figure brandishing a slender, glowing sword. After a moment in which neither group moved, one of the attackers produced a large number of shuriken and hurled them at Naruto. When Sasuke awoke from his reverie and made his way to the other attacker, Naruto leapt quickly out of his way. Sakura stood in front of Tazuna after taking a kunai out of her pouch. One of the newly discovered demon brothers yelled, "No one makes a fool of the demon brothers," and charged at Naruto while brandishing a small wakizashi. With a swift palm motion, Naruto swallowed a pill and started his own charge. His opponent leapt out of nowhere and slashed down at Naruto. However, This strategy was halted when Naruto threw a kunai at his opponent and watched him dodge. With a sly smile, Naruto's opponent swung sideways in midair and bounced off a nearby tree, heading straight for Naruto again. However, he vanished in an instant and reappeared behind him, alongside another kunai that had become lodged in the tree. Before he knew it, the first demon brother was falling, with a lot of electricity burning him from the inside out and 2 rather deep cuts on his back. When Naruto turned around, he saw that Sasuke and the other brother were still fighting. With 1 kunai in each hand, Sasuke dashed in the direction of the second brother. He swung quickly, getting parried with each swing, until he found a gap and executed a roundhouse kick. It momentarily stunned his opponent, but Naruto's form in front of him stopped Sasuke before he could stab him. Sasuke started to grumble before pointing out that Naruto's right arm had been impaled by the demon brother's claw, which would have hit him in a more critical place if Naruto hadn't intervened. Luckily, the Raijin would be trapped between the demon brother's lungs, preventing him from receiving any more shots. When Kakashi saw both brothers down and frying, he picked that precise moment to reappear, visible eye wide. His gaze gradually shifted to focus on Naruto's wound. Their claws were poison-tipped, you know. With wide eyes, Naruto took 3 pills out of his pocket, swallowed them, and then looked around anxiously. Naruto's hands started to glow green, and Kakashi's eyes instantly widened tremendously. Then, as the green started to wildly shift into deep viridian, he hurried over to Naruto and grabbed his wrist. Naruto, you really shouldn't try that until you have better chakra control. If you tried this on yourself, I think your hand would become something along the lines of, say, 30 years older? With wide eyes, Naruto slammed out his chakra, grabbed a kunai, and stabbed himself in the wrist, causing his arteries to bleed out. Sasuke twitched at the sheer volume of blood dripping out, and Sakura winced. Though the bandage was a little reddish in color, Naruto abruptly withdrew a roll of bandages and used his teeth and uninjured left arm to successfully stop the blood flow. While Sasuke gazed at Naruto in confusion, Kakashi grinned and gave him a pat on the head. Sakura turned to Kakashi after giving Naruto a worried glance. Why would he have turned 30 years older, and what was he trying, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi glanced at Sakura and then Naruto. He was attempting medical chakra treatment, a technique no doubt procured from that book he was reading. He was, however, using too much chakra, which would have caused the healed part to age prematurely, as medical chakra basically speeds up the healing factor, which is innately slow, and, in turn speeds up aging for the healed part as well. After nodding, Sakura hurried over to try to assist Naruto. Then, with a frown on his masked face, Kakashi turned to face a nervous looking Tazuna. You never mentioned ninja. Bandits, yes. But trained shinobi would be at least a B-ranked mission. As the group members gathered around him, Tazuna stepped back and sighed. Wave can't afford the cost of a B-ranked mission. That's the reason we're building a bridge, to get income, and... Kakashi interrupted him. That doesn't explain why there are ninja after you. After a brief moment of fear, Tazuna went on. We, Gato. Sakura scowled briefly. As in the rich shipping magnate Gato? Tazuna gave a nod. The bridge we're building would ruin the shipping industry in that area, and he doesn't want that happening. He hired ninja to kill me before I could go and deliver the final plans. After a moment of silence following Kakashi's nod, he turned to his team. This is officially a B-ranked mission, far beyond the capabilities of a genin. Do you guys still want to continue? For a long time there was no movement. Naruto nodded abruptly, and Sakura spoke up after glancing at him and then at Sasuke. I think we're good enough for a B-ranker, and, besides, we're so far out already, we should go on. For a moment, Kakashi's face was expressionless, but then it broke into a smile. Bravery is a good quality, people. With a sigh of relief, Tazuna watched as Kakashi and Naruto took the lead once more and the group set out on a new adventure. Nobody paid attention to Kakashi's anxious expression as he gazed off into the distance. The next battle will be Chunin ranked. I hope I'm doing the right thing. Mist started to form around them, and Naruto looked around anxiously. After gulping down one of his pills, he glanced back and then forward again, feeling oddly relieved that the bridge builder and his team were still present. He let out a sigh as he reviewed what had happened since the battle with the demon brothers. Sakura continued to fuss over his wound and appeared oddly reverent around him. Naruto had no idea what had happened to her. For long periods, Sasuke had been looking at him, either at his bandaged hand or at him in general. To tell the truth, Naruto thought it was eerie. After the last attack, Kakashi had been acting normally, but Naruto had seen him become tense at the slightest sound, probably out of worry. Sakura startled Naruto and made Kakashi twitch when she hurled a kunai at a nearby tree. She then squeaked as she made her way to the tree where her kunai had struck. A Snow White Rabbit was cowering beneath the kunai when Team 7 gathered around her. Naruto and Kakashi were on the same page as Sakura apologized profusely. Tazuna laughed, and Sasuke sighed. How could a winter-coated rabbit be residing here? After that, a boat appeared not far down the road. With a smile, Tazuna pushed the group on. When Tazuna walked up to the middle-aged man on the boat, his mouth curved into a smile. Once all 5 of them were on board, they started out, with the man pushing the boat out into a vast river with an oar. With a somber expression, Kakashi started talking quietly. Sakura started to smile as he said, "Our next battle will not be at chunin level." Naruto sighed in relief. "It'll be junin level." Naruto swallowed another of his pills, and all smiles vanished. Before the group resumed their journey, Tazuna had a brief conversation with the boat's owner as the vessel came to a halt at a small wooden pier. "We're heading for my daughter's house now. We'll be relatively safe there, and you'll get a nice meal and beds," the bridge builder replied. The journey was lengthy and largely uneventful until Sasuke accelerated and followed Naruto. Sasuke spoke up quietly after Naruto wriggled for a while, not wanting to be there but also not wanting to be impolite. "Thanks." Sasuke slowed down once more and started traveling behind everyone else, nearly knocking Naruto down in the process. Following that, Naruto took a lot of pills, attracting a lot of attention. Kakashi grinned as he observed the gradual development of his group's cooperation. However, this sequence of events was cut short when Kakashi darted towards Tazuna and shoved him to the ground, barely evading a massive cleaver that slid past them and immediately lodged itself in a nearby tree. All eyes were focused on a man who had materialized atop the enormous sword as Team 7 recovered from the shock. When he turned around, he saw a man with dark skin, wearing a mask, and his arms and body covered in many bandages. "Sharingan Kakashi, we finally meet." Reaching into a pocket, Kakashi took out a red booklet. Bingo book. A rank listed Nukanen from Kirigakure, Momochi Zabuza? The enigmatic stranger burst out laughing. "I'm honored. The great copy. Nin of 1,000 jutsu knows my name. I am humbled." After taking some pills, Naruto took his Raijin out of his pocket but did not activate it. Sakura prepared herself by taking out a few shuriken. The 3 genin stood in front of or surrounding Tazuna while Sasuke assumed a defensive stance. As a lot of mist accumulated around the area, Zabuza grinned. Then he vanished, only to reappear on a nearby large body of water with his sword ready. Kakashi mouthed several orders while growling, "You're no match for him, stay back." However, as he charged at Zabuza with a kunai drawn, he secretly wondered about Naruto. The 2 Junin continued to trade blows, each more devastating than the last, until Kakashi found a way to stab Zabuza in the stomach, causing him to dissolve into water with a twisted smile that was just barely visible through the mask. Behind him, another Zabuza emerged, swung his sword in a broad arc, and just missed the copy. Nin. As soon as he touched water again, Kakashi jumped up and down and charged. Once more, the two appeared to be on equal footing until an oddly familiar incident took place. The fallen Zabuza turned into water. Kakashi saw right away the scheme Zabuza was putting together. Use copies to wear down your opponent, then eliminate him when he's weak. Even though Kakashi still had a lot of energy left over, he knew he couldn't continue for very long in case Zabuza got a chance to try his own. While the duel was happening, Naruto kept an eye out for the real Zabuza. The wind abruptly changed above him, and he instantly pushed himself back, pushing Tazuna aside as Zabuza landed where he had been and swung his blade, barely missing Sakura and Sasuke, who had observed Naruto's movements and anticipated what would happen. Zabuza's expression changed as Naruto activated his Raijin. As he clashed with Naruto's blade, the Junin remarked, "Nice sword, there, kiddo." As Zabuza did the same, Naruto clenched his teeth and his sword turned into a blur, trying to strike and deflect. "Kaden, Gukakyu," was screamed as a huge ball of flame rushed toward them. As the Zabuza clone vanished in Sasuke's attack, Naruto smirked and rolled out of the way. He gave Sasuke a thumbs up, and Sasuke just grinned and nodded. After that, Naruto winked at Sakura and tossed her a bunch of kunai. After giving them a brief glance, she nodded. As if to deter the Konaha genin, 3 Zabuza impersonators suddenly appeared in front of Kakashi and Zabuza's battle. Expecting this, Sakura hurled 3 of Naruto's kunai at the clones, who simply ducked out of the way as the kunai landed harmlessly at their feet. Kakashi, meanwhile, was dealing with his own problems because every time he defeated one of Zabuza's clones, another one would emerge and start fighting. Kakashi felt water envelop and ensnare him in a bubble, and his eye opened in realization as the Zabuza he was fighting suddenly smirked. When Kakashi was trapped in the weird water bubble, Naruto's eyes widened, and the Zabuzas all started laughing. Water came into Kakashi's mouth and he spoke in a muffled voice. "Run. You can't beat him." With a scowl, Naruto vanished and reappeared briefly behind one of the Zabuza clone guards, then behind another, and finally behind the central one. All three suddenly vanished into the water, and Naruto quickly spun around and tossed what appeared to be a small wooden plank into the water close to Zabuza. With a startled expression, Zabuza burst out laughing. "You're damn fast, kid, I'll give you that. You may even be." Naruto appeared in front of him, where the little plank was, interrupting him. Zabuza quickly ducked back as the Raijin moved in his direction, observing with resentment as Kakashi escaped and his water prison was opened. Kakashi knelt down and gave Naruto a pat on the head as he instantly sank into the water. "I'll handle the rest. Tell Sakura and Sasuke they did a good job." After giving a nod, Naruto started swimming toward the shore. Placing his sword on his back, Zabuza cursed and started to flow through a lot of hand seals. Kakashi revealed his Sharingan by raising his head, "Protector." After that, he imitated Zabuza's seals. They kept going for a while before both Junin yelled, "Suiden! Suiryuden no Jutsu!" Sakura whispered to Sasuke, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. Doesn't Kakashi-sensei already know that move? Why does he need to use his eye? Since Kakashi had demonstrated the Sharingan to him during a training session, Sasuke no longer was in awe of its powers and shook his head. There was a battle between the two giant water dragons that surfaced from the water, and both of them were able to hurt each other before dissolving into the water and making it rain. After waiting for the Rain to stop, Kakashi saw Zabuza performing additional hand seals. As he yelled for his team to descend, his eyes grew wide. The surrounding area flooded as a result of a massive explosion that created enormous amounts of water. Naruto looked up as soon as the explosion had stopped to see Zabuza and Kakashi fighting again. But then Zabuza felt 3 needles strike his neck. His sword dropped from his grasp, and he collapsed, his eyes wide. In the clearing, an enigmatic young man wearing a mask grabbed Zabuza's arm and, with unexpected ease, lifted him onto his shoulder. Then he looked at Team 7 while holding Zabuza's greatsword. "I thank you for your assistance in the Zabuza's retrieval. I will now be disposing of his body." Kakashi stumbled back and hit the floor. Naruto gave the young person a questioning glance. "Shouldn't Hunter.Nin dispose of the body right there and then?" The hunter appeared surprised, backed up quickly, and vanished in a cloud of smoke. With a sigh, Kakashi stood up. "We'll be seeing those two again." He saw several reopened cuts and winced. There was silence as they got closer to Tazuna's house. Kakashi stumbled through the door and was met by a kind-looking woman. Her words, "Oh my, we must get you to a bed," hurried him to a bedroom close by. Naruto entered the house and took in the rather dismal decor. Soon after, Sasuke entered and immediately took a seat in a shabby-looking chair. Sakura took a seat beside him and gave him a dreamy look. Naruto flinched as his arm started to hurt after settling into a shoddy sofa. Soon after, Tazuna entered and grinned. "Would you guys like anything to drink?" Naruto and Sasuke both shook their heads. Asking if he had green tea, Sakura got up. A young boy later emerged from a room as they were being led to their rooms. He frowned as he saw the genin and started talking softly. "Nobody can beat Gato. You're wasting your time, your energy and your lives." They entered a medium-sized room with 3 tatami mats spread out, and Naruto chose to ignore him. The young boy glared at the 3 genin from the door as Tsunami sighed. "Forgive Inari. He hasn't been the same since Gato killed his father." She had pushed Inari along with her as she hurried out of the room after mentioning the last part with great difficulty and suppressing some tears. As each genin sat on their designated tatami mat and went about their individual tasks, there was silence. Tsunami invited them in for dinner a few hours later. Sasuke had been sharpening his kunai, Sakura had been filing her nails, and Naruto had been reading yet another book. They quietly made their way outside and sat down at a little table in a dimly lit room. A bandaged Kakashi sat facing their side of the table, and Tazuna was present. As they walked in, he grinned. "Good job out there, guys. That was a nice bit of planning." When Tsunami brought their food, Team 7 grinned sheepishly. The flavor of the Cooked eel rolled over Naruto's tongue as he chewed his food thoroughly. Although the menu had been small, it appeared that Tsunami was very good at making the most of the money. The cuisine was excellent. Naruto listened carefully as Sakura started talking to Tsunami about the cooking technique. He had to cook for himself back in Konaha, after all. Kakashi was discussing the state of Wave Country with Tazuna, and Sasuke had reached for extras. Inari entered the room abruptly. "How can you people be so cheerful? You're all going to die horrible deaths. You're all freaking retarded." The room fell silent, and all eyes were on him. Naruto was the only one who kept eating. Inari gave him a scowl. "What the hell is wrong with you? You're going to die, you flipping freak." Naruto merely grabbed another eel fragment. "I don't talk to losers." Naruto kept eating. Inari was enraged. He bounded from the room. Sakura appeared irritated, and Sasuke went back to eating. Kakashi followed Inari's gaze. Tsunami let out a sigh. "I'm really sorry, he's quite persistent." Sakura raised her voice. "Naruto, you really shouldn't, he lost his father." Naruto just kept on eating. "And I grew up without any parents at all." After setting down his bowl, Naruto got up and made his way to the living area. Sasuke had stopped eating. Sakura stared at the doorway, and Kakashi gave a sorrowful nod. Kakashi met his 3 students outside Tsunami's house the following day. He was using crutches to support himself and had his arm in a cast. He saw that Sakura and Sasuke were looking at Naruto, who was reading beneath a tree. He let out a sigh. "Guys, I estimate we have a week or so before Zabuza manages to recover enough to attack again. I've got to teach you some exercises." As he approached a nearby tree and planted a foot on its trunk, all eyes were on him. Then he started up the tree slowly. He turned around and peered down at the genin when he had reached the halfway point. This technique depends on chakra control. Naruto's expression dimmed. "And I know you aren't very good at that, Naruto, so I've devised something for you, similar to this exercise." Kakashi went on, and Naruto grinned. "Anyway, the 2 of you should start on this. The faster you can do this, the faster I can teach you something like what I'll be teaching Naruto." After nodding, Sakura and Sasuke got to work. Curious about the outcome of trying the exercise, Naruto approached a tree and planted a foot on its trunk. He made an effort to direct chakra to his foot. The portion of the tree his leg was on was reduced to splinters when an enormous surge abruptly broke up the flow. Sakura and Sasuke watched in disbelief as the tree fell. Kakashi gestured for Naruto to follow him while shaking his head. They soon came to a small lake in a clearing. It was rather immaculate, with sunlight filtering through the holes in the dense canopy leaves and flowers growing in dense clusters around the lake. Kakashi approached the lake, stepped on its surface, and kept going until he was standing in the middle of it. "No doubt you recognize this technique. After all, you just saw it in action not 2 days ago." Naruto gave a cautious nod. "I know what you're thinking. Water. Walking requires oodles more chakra control than tree walking. This is why I've taken the liberty of making something for you. A buffer, if you will. It takes advantage of the fact that you can perform the Hiraishin." As Kakashi tossed him a package, Naruto nodded once more. When Naruto opened it, 2 shin guards with the Hiraishin focus seal engraved on them were visible. "Put them on." Naruto followed instructions. He jogged immediately to test their flexibility after being taken aback by how light they were. "Now, I want you to focus on one of the seals, then on the other. Keep doing that, then walk onto the water." After focusing for a moment, Naruto nodded and started to move toward the water's edge. His body was flickering in an odd way. He entered the water and was able to stay afloat, but the surface of the water was constantly roiling violently. Kakashi gave a shrug. "It's not stealthy, and your mind will always have an extra task to manage, but as long as the shin guards are above water, you will be too." Naruto gave a nod. "The theory behind it is that you're incorporeal for the second the Hiraishin is in effect, right? So if you keep warping, technically, I won't bore you. Oh, and one more thing. It requires a giant amount of chakra to maintain. Luckily, you have more than enough. In turn, your chakra reserves will also grow if you keep using this little technique. Well, I have to oversee Sasuke and Sakura. Take care." Then Kakashi started to leave. Naruto watched him leave before carrying on with his workout. Unsteadily, Naruto walked on the water. He was exhausted beyond belief, and his reserves had been exhausted. Collapsing as his feet touched solid ground, he walked slowly to shore. He immediately fell asleep as the aroma of the flowers transported him to a dreamlike realm. As he pushed himself up, Naruto's eyes opened abruptly. he noticed that the sun was shining particularly brightly as he looked around. Good afternoon. With a start, Naruto turned his head and saw a girl picking flowers at the edge of the clearing. He got up and bowed, and she followed suit. Naruto questioned, "What are you doing so far out here?" The girl grinned. "I could ask you the same thing." They both burst out laughing. Then Naruto halted. "I'm, training, miss." The girl gave a courteous smile. "How interesting. I'm picking flowers and herbs for a friend of mine." As she continued to gather flowers and herbs, Naruto oohed and silently observed her. Then she spoke. "Do you have a precious person?" Naruto gave her a questioning glance. "Do you have a person you'd give your life for in an instant?" As she got to her feet, Naruto gazed at her. "Until you do." She pivoted. "Until you do. No matter how much training you do, you'll never be truly strong." She grinned. "And I'm a boy." After turning, the boy started to move into the forest. Naruto sighed and yelled as he stared at the boy's vanishing form. "Goodbye, Mr. Hunter.nin. I'm sure we'll meet again." After a moment of inaction, the boy resumed his stroll. A faint smile would have been visible on his face at that precise moment. With a sigh, Naruto went back to his training. The following day, Kakashi discovered Naruto sprawled out by the lake's edge. Sighing, Kakashi slung Naruto's lifeless body over his shoulder and made his way back to Tsunami's house. Naruto was startled awake. For what duration was he absent? Taking his Raijin from his bedside, he got to his feet. After that, he entered the doorway. Inari's day wasn't going well. And now this after the idiots had gone off to be killed. As the two thugs shoved him around, he suppressed his tears. Tsunami lay on the ground, a huge gash from a katana's handle causing her head to bleed. "Hey, stupid kid. So damn. You are K." When Inari's eyes opened, he saw his tormentor lying on the ground, his head bloodied from the forceful blow to the Raijin's hilt. The other thug staggered back and fell off the small pier into the water, but Naruto twitched as he spun around and roundhouse kicked him into oblivion. As soon as possible, Naruto started tending to Tsunami, bringing her inside and applying bandages to her head. While Naruto continued to tend to her bruises, Inari could only watch. Naruto soon got to his feet and dabbed at his perspiration, then he turned to face Inari. Where did they go? Inari gave him a furious look. They went to the bridge, to get killed by. The living quarters had already been occupied by Naruto. With his new shin guards securely fastened around his shins, he appeared in his black battlesuit. He took a lot of pills right away and swallowed them with a big gulp of water. He paused as he was leaving through the door. "If your country continues to deteriorate like I've heard it is, I'm afraid you're going to die anyway." Naruto pivoted. "At least if I die, I'll die trying to protect something, even if it's your country." After turning, he left through the door. After standing where he was, Inari pulled out a ripped photo of a man with a muscular build. Then he took a seat in a chair close by. At the bridge, Kakashi was occupied with pushing Zabuza away and avoiding his blows wherever he could. Zabuza's surprises were obscured by the dense summoned mists, and Kakashi's vision was poor. Sasuke was struggling as well. It wasn't fun to be stuck in a dome of mirrors that your opponent could move through at impossible speeds. Zabuza had previously identified his opponent as Haku, and he was getting ready to unleash another round of Senbon. Sasuke swore. But all of a sudden, a kunai appeared before him and lodged itself in the ground. Even the best of them would have been astounded at how quickly Naruto appeared. He tapped his left wrist guard while grinning. All of a sudden, a great number of tiny kunai started to emerge in various directions. These kunai were just big enough to have a seal carved on them, but they couldn't do any long-term harm. Haku promptly let loose a lot of Senbon, all of which were aimed at the newcomer. Every one of them missed. When Sasuke saw Naruto's plan, he had already rolled away. Mini kunai were scattered everywhere. Naruto had the ability to teleport to any location. Haku moved through the mirrors, searching for a gap. He searched, but was unable to find the newcomer. Naruto suddenly materialized in front of him. Surprised that someone could predict his movements, Haku gasped. "Hello, again, Mr. Hunter.nin. With a smile on his face, Naruto swung his Raijin, breaking the mirror that previously held Haku. As Naruto continued to slash at each mirror, it instantly reformed. But then, in a mirror far behind him, Haku appeared. Sasuke had been standing in front of the mirror. Sasuke collapsed on the ground, needles piercing every part of his body as blood spurted from his mouth. As he went unconscious, he swore. Naruto trembled as the scene began to play repeatedly in his mind. He picked up his pill bottle. He took them out, and just as he was ready to take one out, the bottle was broken by a needle. I can't allow you to take soldier pills. Under his mask, Haku scowled while his opponent stood motionless. He got a bunch of ice needles ready. I am sorry, I am to go and protect Zabuza, Sama. Haku fired his projectiles and saw them strike, nothing. Haku was pushed so hard that his mazur exploded into a huge number of shards, and he was pushed out, landing on the ground outside the dome's perimeter when he felt a hand grab his throat. Raijin instantly activated as Naruto grabbed Haku and threw him into one of his mirrors, his face displaying nothing but pure joy. Haku slid to the ground after colliding forcefully with the ice structure. A stab wound in his lower abdomen caused electricity to suddenly flow through his body, causing a wrenching pain. Naruto flashed his teeth in a smile. Where's your true power, now, girly dot man? As the Raijin was pulled out and then put back into his left shoulder, Haku gasped. Come on. Haku looked up feebly, only to be kicked hard in the face. A huge chakra spike was felt abruptly coming from Kakashi's direction. Haku stumbled to his feet and tried to charge at Kakashi's command, his eyes widening. Oh no you don't. With a smile, Naruto took hold of Haku's head and slammed it so hard into the ground that the concrete cracked. Haku let out a cry as Naruto's severe treatment caused his jaw to break like delicate china. Grabbing Haku's leg, Naruto lifted him up and repeatedly slammed him into the ground. But then, out of Kakashi's direction, a figure appeared. With an enormous scream, Zabuza charged at Naruto, his stomach gaping open. With a sly smile, Naruto struck Zabuza with Haku's battered form. With a growl, Zabuza dropped his great sword and charged Naruto. With a smile, Naruto threw Haku away while retaining his Raijin. Naruto exclaimed, "Fist fight, with excitement." After charging at Zabuza and launching a barrage of jabs, Naruto viciously kicked Zabuza in the wound. Zabuza, on the other hand, apparently didn't notice, punching a smiling Naruto in the face and sending him flying. As Zabuza persisted in his savage attack, Naruto recovered in midair and bounded off the ground, somersaulting backwards. After a few somersaults, Naruto lay on his back and kicked Zabuza's chin up as he got closer. After sprinting to Zabuza's stomach, Naruto quickly jabbed at his wound before roundhouse kicking his head. With a crazy smile, Naruto activated his Raijin and rushed in Zabuza's direction as he flew away. With a tremendous roar, Zabuza charged toward certain death. Rakery. When Naruto felt the lightning infused hand enter his chest, his smile vanished. With a weary sigh, Kakashi inserted another of the thirds provided syringes into Naruto's neck. With a growl, Naruto swung the Raijin at Kakashi, who quickly backed away. Dom, I wanted to kill, As Kakashi watched the severely wounded Zabuza sob as he embraced Haku's body, Naruto fell to the ground. Ahahaha. With a sigh, Kakashi saw a short man enter the scene, followed by a whole army of thugs. Now I won't have to pay him. Ha ha ha. With a growl, the wounded Zabuza raised his head. Gato just chuckled. You can't do anything, now. You and your worthless assistant. That little girly dot man couldn't do a. Before he could finish his sentence, he passed away. Through Zabuza's stomach, a kunai was fastened to his arm. When Gato's body fell, there was silence. The thugs in the area all started yelling in rage and moving toward Zabuza's injured body. They weren't at all put off by Kakashi's slow approach into their path. Kakashi was suddenly struck by a thug as a wooden crossbow bolt flew past him. Before noticing his colleagues cowering, he snarled and shook it off. The whole population of the main village in the Wave Country stood before them. As they moved forward, the newcomers snarled, frightening the bandits so much that many of them started to run away and plunge into the sea. The audience applauded. With a sigh, Kakashi saw Zabuza's shattered body creep in Haku's direction. As Kakashi drew near, Zabuza settled down beside Haku. Hey, Kakashi, you know, I don't blame the blonde kid. I guess I'm actually thankful to him. I guess it really did take his death to open my eyes. I wanted to tell him to call Haku my son. With a smile on his face and a tear streaming down his cheek, Zabuza put his hand on Haku's and breathed his last. Kakashi sighed and leaned down. After that, he approached Naruto and picked him up. He made his way to where the cheering of the villagers could be heard. When Kakashi appeared, Tazuna grinned. Inari tells me that Naruto was the one who convinced him to get all of us down here. People, 3 cheers for Naruto. As they started a new one, The audience applauded and one man took the lead. The Great Naruto Bridge. As he set Naruto down, Kakashi remained silent. Then he turned to the sky. I wonder, a week later, in Konaha, Naruto awoke in a hospital bed. He glanced at his hands, then around. He collapsed back onto his pillow and started crying. Flashback. 2 weeks after the wave incident, Kakashi sat by Naruto's bedside. Sakura and Sasuke, who was still limping, had been there quite a few times. Naruto had remained silent the entire time, staring out the window without even opening any of his books. Kakashi was concerned. Naruto, do you need anything? No answer. Well, I have a surprise for you. Naruto didn't look at all. I've requested for an entry pass for you and your team into the chunin exams. I think your performance in the current mission proves that you can at least try to. By that point, Naruto had turned to look at him fearfully. No, I can't, it'll happen again. I can't, I won't, kill. Kakashi cast a sorrowful glance at Naruto. You won't, I believe in you. Naruto gave a forceful shake of his head. No, you don't understand. I enjoyed killing that boy. I enjoyed killing the assassins. I'll kill again. I can't control it. Naruto's cheeks started to water. Kakashi gave him a back pat. I understand, I'll leave the recommendation here, if you change your mind. As Kakashi walked slowly out the door, Naruto wiped away his tears and collapsed back onto his bed, staring out his window once more. Sakura scowled. Chunin tests? She was unable to assist Naruto and Sasuke in any way, and Kakashi wanted her to take a test meant for the most prestigious genin. With a sigh, Sakura turned to face Sasuke, who was seated across the bridge. She considered asking for a date again, but she brushed it off since she knew how it would be received. It was much easier to talk to Naruto. Naruto. Since the big wave fight, he hadn't been feeling well. Although it seemed odd that she was worried about him, she felt very at ease with him, and at least he didn't just react with inconspicuous head or hand gestures or obnoxious Fez, or HNHS. Sakura let out another sigh. Perhaps it would be preferable if Naruto stayed away for a while, as that would prevent them from taking the chunin exams. Sakura was startled out of her reverie by Kakashi's arrival. Well, team. Today's the deadline for entry into the chunin exam. Most of the teams should be at the administration block as we speak. Sasuke scowled as Sakura nodded. Why can't we go too? Kakashi let out a sigh. 3-man teams, Sasuke. Sasuke scowled more deeply. Kakashi started talking once more. Naruto hasn't been feeling well lately, after the incident with his, anger management issues. Kakashi scowled to himself for the blatant deception. Sasuke frowned and said, so without Naruto, there won't be a chunin exam for us? I'm afraid so. Sakura was oddly happy. Sasuke was furious. Kakashi was dejected, and no one spoke until Hey, guys, stepping onto the bridge was Naruto. In addition to his knee and wrist guards, which were concealed beneath his long black pants, he was wearing a white shirt. Though she wasn't entirely sure how to feel on the inside, Sakura cheered. Kakashi grinned broadly, and Sasuke grinned. Kakashi followed Team 7 as they made their way to the central administration building. Since his last encounter with Naruto, he had observed a change in his behavior. He appeared more uneasy. Kakashi questioned whether this would have an impact on how well he performed on the tests. Kakashi started talking as soon as they entered the building. Well, now. You're on your own here on out. Remember all I've taught you and don't forget to think before you act. Bye. Kakashi left the 3 genin alone and walked away. With barely restrained zeal, Sasuke said, well, then. Let's go. Sakura sighed as Naruto reluctantly nodded. In order to observe what appeared to be a struggle, Team 7 ascended a set of stairs. A green, uniformed boy with the single most gaudy haircut and eyebrows lay next to a girl in a pink shirt who was on the floor, trembling in what appeared to be fear. As onlookers watched, a long-haired boy with white eyes appeared to be speaking fearfully to 2 tough-looking boys in front of a door. No can do, kids. I can't allow you wimps in here. Believe me when I say I'm doing you a favor. The boy turned to face Sasuke, who snorted, you got a problem, punk. Sasuke gave a sneer. This is the 2nd floor. Your embarrassingly bad genjutsu is as transparent a glass of water. Naruto waved and said, hello, Katetsu-san. After giving Sasuke a long look, the boy burst out laughing. He waved to Naruto before he and his companion vanished into a smoke cloud. As the 2 on the floor stood up and cleaned themselves up, Sasuke laughed. The green-clad boy moved forward. "You are Uchiha?" Sasuke gave a nod. The boy in the green clothing appears to have sparkling eyes. "Yush. I have finally found the opponent who will be my eternal rival. My youthful springtime will soon come true." When Naruto awoke from his reverie, he saw the boy in green staring at Sakura. There was an eerie silence. "Hello, miss. You're pretty. I'm Rock Lee. Will you go out on a date with me?" Sakura took a slow step back. "No." Lee, who had just been introduced, arched his brows. "But why, miss? My youthful springtime. Irk." Following the boy with white eyes, the girl in pink started to pull Lee's ear, but Lee was interrupted. Then she turned back and grinned. "Sorry about Lee, and thanks for the, save. Yeah, bye." As they vanished around a corner, Team 7 gazed after them. Naruto had a contemplative expression. As the onlookers started to stream past them, he said, "They didn't need our help." He was met with bewildered looks. The long-haired boy, that was Hyuga Neji. Sakura let out a gasp as she recognized the name. Sasuke simply gave him an odd look. He was the guy who jukened the examiner into the hospital. Sasuke thought, and Naruto nodded. Smart move. They wanted to hide their true skill. After standing in the hallway for some time, Sasuke started to head for the next set of stairs, followed by Sakura, whose face showed silent resignation, and Naruto, who was always hesitant. When Team 7 arrived at the third floor, they saw only one door. Naruto flinched at what they saw when Sasuke quickly pushed it open. Every ninja in the room was watching them, some of them staring at them in an odd way. The ninja wore various headbands, most of which were well known, including the grass and sands. A few teams that Naruto recognized were Teams 8 and 10, who were standing in a corner of the room and seated on a row of chairs, respectively. In a different corner, farthest away from the exit, stood Lee's team. They appeared to be talking. Ino started to approach them, interrupting Naruto's thoughts. Sakura had a big smile on her face when Naruto turned to face her. "Now who's the better ninja team, Piggy Girl?" Ino's face scrunched up as she froze. She became pale, but she soon recovered her normal color. Sakura burst out laughing. "You rookies should really shut up." When Ino and Team 7 turned around, they saw a white-haired boy looking at them with a weary expression. "Every year I have to deal with you total greenhorns, blah." Sakura started to mouth protest as Sasuke twitched, but the newcomer's tiny hand gesture stopped them both. "Hey, I'm trying to help your miserable hides here." After squinting, Naruto started talking. Yakushi Kabuto, genin ranked Konaha shinobi, attempted chunin exams 7 times, all failed. No particular speciality observed, presumably trained by adoptive father, who was a medic. Naruto became quiet. He blushed a little in embarrassment, and all eyes were on him. "I did some research on everyone here after getting the attendance list from the third." Kabuto laughed. "Impressive. Looks like you aren't as green as these other twits." Kabuto sensed animosity toward him. Kabuto pulled out a pack of cards and shuffled them, saying, "Looks like you won't need any info." Sasuke gave the pack a wary glance. He eyed Kabuto angrily and said, "Chakra trace cards. You have information about me in there." Kabuto had a blank expression on his face. The cards were abruptly taken away by a hand. Kabuto snarled as he turned to confront the thief and saw his prized cards positioned above a slender cylindrical object. Shinobi Rule Number 34, Subsection 2. A shinobi must be unidentified. Any information known about him. When Naruto's Raijin activated, there was a purposeful pause. Is a liability. A hidden anger glowed in Kabuto's eyes, but it was soon gone. Very smart. With a smile, Kabuto put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, making him uncomfortable. "I think you'll do quite well in this little exam." Kabuto stopped and turned to face the rest of his audience. Unlike these louts, he chuckled and started to leave. Abruptly, a strange ninja with a bandage ran ahead of him and punched him with a gauntlet that looked heavy. Kabuto ducked and sprang back. His glasses shattered as he grinned. With a gasp, he put his palm to his face. After glancing at his crouching form, the mystery ninja turned to face Ino and Team 7. "Laughed too much. Hey." A hand clamped down on Kabuto's shoulder as he stood up, drawing a kunai with one hand over his left eye. There'll be no fighting before the test. When Kabuto turned, he saw a huge figure. The figure moved to the middle of the space. You'll get enough of that later. Every eye in the room was fixed on him, and there was silence. In a loud voice, he yelled, "The chunin exams start now. as Team 7 retreated and Kabuto approached his group while continuing to tend to his eye. Naruto looked around anxiously, seeing Sakura on the 5th row behind him and Sasuke in the 2nd. He was in the 3rd row, in the center. As the examiner started, he swallowed a pill nervously. "I am Morino Ibiki, Special Operations Information Retrieval and Confirmation Department." His lips formed a tiny curvature. To the unenlightened, that means the torture department. As he went on, many people's eyes widened. This is the first part of the chunin examinations, so listen up. It's a written test. There is an additional 10th question. That question will be given to you in the last 15 minutes of this examination. The circumstances under which you'll be operating are as so. Cheating will not be condoned, and 2 marks from your total of 10 will be deducted each time you are caught. You only need 1 mark to progress in this exam. Should your marks fall to 0. Ibiki's smile turned into an odd one. You and your entire team will be disqualified. As Ibiki slammed a nearby table, making a crater in it and bringing the room to a halt, there were gasps and a lot of anxious conversation. As he spoke in the gentlest of tones, he grinned. "You may begin now." Pens clicked and paper was shuffled. Naruto gazed at the initial query. A written exam was not what he had anticipated. He had tried to decipher the 1st and 2nd chunin exams by studying the previous ones before departing for the Wave Country mission. The majority of shinobi also kept quiet about it. Naruto let out a sigh. Gazing at the paper, Naruto went over each question one by one. He arched an eyebrow. This test was challenging. He and Sakura would probably be able to answer most of the questions correctly, but the others would probably be unable to answer any of them. And why were those ninjas seated near the windows? Slowly, Naruto raised his gaze. The ceiling is mirrored. His eyes widened abruptly, and he slowly turned to look around. Individuals were being dishonest. The characteristic protruding veins of the Byakugan were visible around Hyuga Neji's eyes. Hyuga Hinata did the same. Sasuke appeared to be doing well, and Ino appeared to be getting ready for her Shintention. He must have activated the Sharingan, Naruto surmised. Every one of them was cheating. A kunai landed on the table beside Naruto, startling him out of his reverie. One of the chunin seated by the windows said, "Row 3, Table 8, get out now. You and your entire team are disqualified." As they were led from the room, angry gasps could be heard. As more were apprehended and dispatched, Naruto kept working on his paper. After noticing multiple attempts to view his paper, he turned it upside down when he was finished. Morino Ibiki eventually moved back into the middle of the space. Everyone's eyes were on him. "It's time for you to learn about the final question. Now, there's a procedure to this. First of all, if you get it right, good for you. If you get it wrong, however, no matter how many points you've garnered so far, you'll fail. And you'll also be unable to join the chunin exam again." The stunned silence was broken by a voice. "For the next 4 months, till the next one, you mean?" Ibiki chuckled. No, he smiled again, a little broader. "Indefinitely." There were gasps, and the quiet gave way to anxious conversation. Ibiki made another crater when he slammed a wall next to it. He glanced at the wall and quickly shook his hand. "I've got to stop doing that, this is obviously coming out of my paycheck." With a sigh, he turned back to the audience. "You can choose not to accept said question, the result of which would be expulsion from the exam, but no restrictions on your future attendances will be put in place. Additionally, as with previous procedures, if one man leaves, the rest go too. Now, those who will leave, put your hands up." With the exception of the occasional bird, the entire room fell silent. Anger-filled murmurs were heard as a hand shot upward. 3 people were ushered out by a chunin proctor. And so it went, until only a handful of hands remained. Teams 7, 8, and 10, Neji's team, Kabuto's team, and the enigmatic bandaged ninja's team were among them. Ibiki started talking again, and Naruto glanced around anxiously. "HRRN. Gutsy bunch this year, EH. Well, for those of you who didn't put up your hands." Naruto stiffened. "You all pass." The room fell silent in shock. Naruto raised his hand as his eye twitched. What was the purpose of this 10th question? Ibiki glanced first at him and then at the other genin. "In your lives as ninja, you will understand one thing. Information is a commodity most precious. The easiest way to get information is through interrogation. This is a dire consequence. However, you must never reveal anything. Till death, your allegiance is to your respective village, and till death your allegiance shall remain." The crowd gasped and squeaked as Ibiki took off his headband to reveal deep wounds and scars. Those who left are afraid of dire consequences. They will be the first to reveal your secrets. Ibiki put his head back up and started to say something else when a big black ball smashed into the room and broke a window. A purple-haired woman wearing a jacket was revealed when it unfolded into a banner that flew in all directions. Her gaze wandered to each member of the silent crowd for a long time. "Oh, for the love of," Ibiki muttered instead. She looked over at Ibiki. 27 teams? You're losing your touch, old man." Ibiki sighed as he waved it off and moved slowly away. The woman turned back to her audience, who were still silent. "I am Mitarashi Anko, and I'll be chief examiner for the second exam." There was silence to greet her. She let out a sigh. "Meet me at training ground 47 tomorrow morning at 10 sharp." No one shifted. Anko gave an eye roll. "You're dismissed. Go, 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 go." When all of the genin had departed, Ibiki gathered the scripts. He murmured, "All correct," to himself. "Uzumaki Naruto." A proctor approached from behind. "Amazing, I didn't even catch him cheating." Ibiki took another look at the paper. "You think he actually managed to answer all of these questions without, nah?" Naruto lay on his bed and gazed tiredly at his ceiling. With a heavy sigh, he shut them. Reaching to his bedside, he took the Raijin and gave it a few flips. What was all that talk about precious people about, that boy? The fact that he was only considering it now, over a week after the young man's horrific demise, was astounding. Naruto's eyes opened. What were precious people? He asked himself absently. Were they individuals he looked up to? Did he value his teammates highly? Was the third a valuable individual? Why were people valuable? Did they have combat skills? Their ninjutsu? Was it their fortune? In all the books he had read, he had never once encountered the term. Without these so-called precious people, the young man had said, one could not realize their full potential. Naruto scowled in his own reflection. The young man had a valuable individual. He was defeated. Naruto let out a sigh. Perhaps these folks weren't really that valuable after all? Perhaps the boy's theory was wrong. But then again, the boy had survived an attack, or several attacks, that would have easily destroyed a Chunin. Was the power there? Again, Naruto eyed the ceiling. Precious people were unknown to him. The following morning came swiftly. At his dining table, Naruto honed his older weapons and engraved runes on his more recent ones. He hadn't slept well the night before, and as he gazed out a window at the vermilion sky, lit by the rising sun, the question he had asked himself was still echoing in his head. Silently, he set down his tools and got up, making his way slowly to his refrigerator. Naruto opened the refrigerator and saw that there was a noticeable shortage of food. In actuality, the only item he had left was a fruit basket that the third had left for him during his most recent hospital stay. Shrugging, Naruto quickly grabbed an apple and began to eat it deeply as he made his way back to his table. While eating his apple, he appeared to be thinking as he turned the pages of a book that was resting on his table among several other literary stacks. After a while, Naruto got back up and performed his daily personal hygiene routine. He then came out of the restroom wearing a white shirt and loose black pants, with a hard metallic guard attached to black gloves covering his lower arms and a light armor covering his shoulders. Although they were hidden beneath his pants, he was also sporting his lower leg guards. There were numerous pockets visible on his pants, and he wore a dangling Raijin and a belt fastened to 3 roomy pouches. After securing his arm guards with tight clasps, he left the room. Naruto arrived early at training area 47. He took a pocket watch out of one of his pockets and looked at it. He pondered, 9:15. We have 1 hour and 15 minutes remaining. He looked out at the vast, foreboding forest. It seemed extremely dark, even with the sun shining. It was no wonder why they had called it the Forest of Death. Indeed, Naruto mused, was it not here that the 2 great Sannin, Orochimaru and Jariah, faced off against each other? And, was this not also where the Uchiha clan slaughtered the entirety of Konaha's prisoners? Of war after the Second War? Indeed, did many people lose their lives trying to prevent the rock from entering Konaha during the war? Naruto was so engrossed in his thoughts that he failed to notice a figure approaching from behind. Naruto-kians. The back of Naruto's head was abruptly crushed to something soft by an embrace. Naruto heard a voice and halted his attempt to turn around. I wouldn't do that if I were you. As Naruto started to realize where his head was, he froze and turned beet red. He turned around, still red, to see the purple-haired woman smiling at him as the arms relaxed their hold on his neck. Hello, Anko-san. Two chunin in Anko's entourage were startled by her joyful laughter. Katetsu.san. Azumo.san. Naruto bowed, his voice faintly audible over Anko's laughter. As Naruto's blush did not go away, both chunin laughed. Naruto was seen eating dango with Anko as a few genin started to arrive, while the two chunin behind them talked about something. Anko chuckled and prodded Naruto's cheek, saying, "My little Naruto, all grown up, now, and even taking the big, bad chunin exams." Naruto gave her a strange look. Anko started pinching the poor Naruto's cheeks while he was laughing and chewing his dango. "Ah, all upset that I didn't greet you yesterday? I couldn't, Naruto-kun's favoritism is bad for examiners," says Anko. Naruto looked up as the laughter stopped suddenly. Over the counter, a girl with pink hair was observing Anko and Naruto. "Naruto, what's happening here?" As Anko pushed Naruto, her eyes grew wide and then narrowed. "You sly dog, you got a girlfriend already, huh?" Anko turned to Sakura, ignoring the blushes on both sides. "Don't worry, honey. I'm not invading your territory. Naruto and me go way back, yeah, he's like a brother to me, hee." As she spoke, Sakura's face flushed. I'm not his girlfriend." Anko gazed. Anko pushed a flushed Naruto out of the booth and tossed another packet of dango after him, saying, "Ooh. You must be his teammate." "Yeah. Sorry about holding your guy up." Naruto went to Sakura's side. Anko cocked her head to the side and grinned, saying, "Ooh. You look so cute together." Sakura's mouth opened in silent protest as Naruto slowly withdrew. As Anko burst out laughing, Naruto slowly pulled her away. Sakura and Naruto stood silently, their faces still flushed. Fortunately, Sasuke's prompt arrival broke the silence. Sasuke became aware of the quiet. "Why are the both of you so red?" More silence answered him. He gave a shrug. Oh. Anko took a big stack of forms and walked to the middle of the room. "All right. Runts and bigger runts. Listen up." Anko hesitated. "Everyone here has to sign these forms." The crowd began to murmur. Anko grinned. "Releasing us from responsibility of your deaths." As the forms were distributed, there was a tremendous commotion. Sakura appeared tense, but Naruto and Sasuke both signed their names calmly. After glancing around, Anko started outlining the test's guidelines. "Right. Listen here, you louts. Firstly, these forms are not a practical joke. They're real, and agreed upon by every leader of every village participating in this exam. The threat of death is there, so get the hell out of here if you value your lives, or those of your teammates, particularly highly." No one shifted. As expected. Now, in this exam, there are no prohibitions, thus you are free to use anything you want to. Swords and the like, you can even use summons, for all I care. All you have to do is reach the center of the forest with two official seal scrolls. Heaven and Earth. Anko took two scrolls from her jacket, one that said, Tien, which means sky, or heaven, and another that said, D, which means earth. Acquire one of each. Proceed to the forest center. Please do not open the scrolls. Katetsu and Azumo started passing scrolls to teams after Anko nodded, and Naruto grinned at them as they came up to his team. "Hi, Naruto. Be careful out there, alright?" said Katetsu, as a smiling Azumo passed a heaven scroll to Naruto. Naruto nodded, as the two proctors walked over to the next team, waving at him as they went. "How are you so well known?" With a questioning expression on his face, Sasuke asked. "Yes, Naruto. It looks like you know every ninja we've encountered thus far. Only the villagers seem to have even a slight distaste for you," Sakura said. As she said the final sentence, Naruto winced, but she still gave an explanation. "I used to spend a lot of time with the third. As the Hokage and all, he regularly meets with his ninja. I also go to them because I usually have nothing better to do. I suppose they all influenced me." When he was done, Naruto laughed. Despite their still inquisitive expressions, Sakura and Sasuke ended the conversation. Naruto gulped, as the creaky iron gates closed behind him and his team. He turned, to see a smiling Anko waving at him, with Katetsu and Azumo behind her, smiling as well. Naruto smiled back, and turned back, quickly swallowing 2 pills with a gulp. Team 7 left without a rustle in the leaves. They all kept an eye out for the other teams as they made their way through the enormous treetops. There was a scream coming from somewhere, and Sakura couldn't help but shiver. After a while of moving from treetop to treetop, They paused in a clearing, feeling a little worn out from the activity. Sasuke pulled out a water bottle and said, "Damn, this place is big." Naruto chuckled softly. 257 kilometers, to be exact, he said, watching both of his teammates gawk. Team 7 took their places on different logs and sat quietly. "Hi, Naruto. How are you so knowledgeable?" Sakura inquired. Naruto grinned. "I read a lot. So'd I, but you know all these weird facts that normal people shouldn't." Naruto smiled. Being the Hokage's aide part, time has its perks. Sakura oh. Ed. Then a voice raised its voice. How heartwarming. Together, the adorable little team develops and grows. A man with long hair and a straw hat appeared. Team 7 was immediately alert. "Don't be concerned. Sasuke-kun is the only reason I'm here." Naruto gave him a look. "I was aware that something was wrong with you. You have a rubbery face. Who are you?" The newcomer chuckled. Hee hee. Really intelligent, Naruto-kun. As expected from his son, the newcomer uttered, his words dripping with poison. Naruto gasped as the newcomer grabbed the side of his face and pulled, and his teammates gave him perplexed looks. Orochimaru, an S-rank Konaha criminal. His teammates' eyes widened as they turned to face the now known Orochimaru. Orochimaru chuckled before turning to face them, his pupils shrinking. Naruto froze, as did his teammates. "I'm immobile." Sasuke struggled and cried out. Team 7's eyes were suddenly filled with images of their own disfigured bodies. Sasuke started to shake uncontrollably, while Sakura screamed and held her head. Naruto was swallowing pills like a madman while trembling. Orochimaru approached Naruto and grabbed him by the neck. "Where's that pretty little seal?" Orochimaru raised Naruto's shirt until a big spiraling seal was visible just below his chest. Orochimaru grinned. "Gobyo Fuin," Orochimaru exclaimed, pressing his fingers into Naruto's stomach, causing a gasp and a momentary purple glow from the seal. Naruto's final visible expression was twisted and shocked as he was launched through the dense forest. Sakura and Sasuke failed to notice Orochimaru's approach because they were too preoccupied with their murderous intentions. Orochimaru approached Sakura with a menacing gait, took her arm, and lifted her while sadistically observing the tears streaming down her cheeks. Sasuke abruptly interrupted Orochimaru, holding the heaven scroll their team had been given at the start of the test in his outstretched hand. Look. Go away from us," Sasuke stammered, shaking. Orochimaru swatted the scroll to the side and threw a still, whimpering Sakura onto a tree, the force knocking her out. "Don't you remember what I said, Sasuke-kun? I'm here, for you." Orochimaru started to grab Sasuke, who was retreating. A loud roar sounded through the forest, and Orochimaru and Sasuke both felt a huge surge of chakra as they looked in the direction it had come from. For a while, the forest was silent. A red, translucent, glowing arm suddenly burst from the forest, grabbing hold of Orochimaru and throwing him back, breaking several trees in the process. As a figure encircled by a throbbing red aura sped past, bringing down even more trees in his wake, Sasuke could only gasp. A few seconds later, Sasuke got up, threw up into a bush, took out his scroll, and trembled to summon Sakura. Orochimaru, on the other hand, was in a very bad place. As a fist struck his face and then a lightning fast stab to his stomach, causing him to double over, he gasped in surprise. When Orochimaru eventually stopped near a large oak, a rather striking crater was formed. Orochimaru regained consciousness and turned to face the front. A figure in front of him was so heavily covered in red chakra that he was nearly invisible, and the only thing that set him apart from a man on fire was, well, nothing. Only a dark silhouette showed that there was a human in the conflagration. Orochimaru stood up and pulled his kusanagi, a blade of the sharpest steel, infallible and unbreakable, from his mouth. The head of the flame-covered figure appeared to glance up a little as it handled a short, thin pole. With a gasp, Orochimaru saw the Raijin's yellow blade extend before exploding in a burst of chakra as it, too, started to envelop itself in red chakra. The fierce chakra flames cooled a little, revealing the face of the figure. Naruto's clothes were still on him, his pupils had turned crimson, and the rest of his eye was black, and his whisker lines had deepened until they appeared as if they had been drawn with a marker. As he moved forward, the intense chakra flames scorched the fertile ground, causing it to crack and harden, while the grass surrounding him singed and either withered or caught fire. 20 feet from Orochimaru, he stopped. "You will die." Orochimaru was in deep, deep excrement, as he would say. He moved quickly to the side as a stream of chakra extensions pierced the ground in a line toward his position, striking the ground like the tails of a burning scorpion, leaving deep gouges and, if they struck anything of life and sentience, death. The forest they had left behind was barren and dry, with some of it destroyed by the flames encircling Orochimaru's opponent. The battle had already raged far from where it had begun. Orochimaru struck himself in the head, wondering how such a disrespectful plebeian could ever strike such a great, no, the greatest, Sannin in human history. Orochimaru used his kusanagi to block a blow from his opponent's lightning sword that was engulfed in flames. If he had arrived at this battle with a regular sword, the blade would have conducted the electricity into his body, but it would probably have melted from the flames first, so he thanked the powers that guarded him for choosing to draw his mystical sword early. As he kicked his opponent's hand away, Orochimaru gasped. He moved out of the way as the flame engulfed blade sliced cleanly through a large oak in its path, only to have it explode into flames 1 second later and burn to ashes the next. Orochimaru frowned. He was defensive, but there was only so much he could do when an opponent so incredibly quick swiped at him before he could even try hand seals. He had not yet been wounded, but he knew that the first one would be the last. 000 as his blade ricocheted off the kusanagi's white steel, Naruto let out a roar. He was powerless to stop the red chakra from leaking out of his skin, burning him even as his incredibly powerful healing factor healed them. He snarled and fell back, landing on a nearby tree, instantly setting it on fire. To keep Orochimaru off guard as he formed a lengthy series of hand seals, Naruto controlled his chakra appendages, firing and retracting them to maintain an endless flow of quick strikes. Katen. No jutsu, Karyuden. Orochimaru hardly had time to raise his head before a massive dragon composed entirely of red flame rushed toward him, its mouth agape, emerging from Naruto and igniting the surrounding vegetation. Orochimaru quickly made a couple awkward hand seals and then slammed them to the ground. Rashomon, Kachiyose no Jutsu. As a massive gate rose from the ground and the enormous dragon continued its unrelenting charge, Orochimaru exclaimed, his eyes wide. As the flame dragon burned up and reduced to embers, it flew into the gate with such force that it exploded, shattering it open. Naruto, with his blade level to his eyes, was charging while encircled by a sphere of blazing chakra, and Orochimaru had only a half-second before the chakra tendrils charged at him once more. Fortunately, Orochimaru only needed a half-second. Jutsu no Kachiyose. He screamed as a huge cloud of smoke rose from where he was standing, immobilizing Naruto. When the smoke cleared and Naruto saw a genuinely enormous indigo snake, his eyes widened a little. You bastard, Orochimaru. Why did you, started the snake. More followed, until it appeared as though the snake was a living pincushion, and then it stopped as 2 of Naruto's chakra appendages sank straight through the snake's underside and drew blood. The snake charged with a growl, clearly angry at the pain. Holding the Raijin horizontally, Naruto leapt until he was just in front of the snake's eye. Tenkin. No Kuchikukan Hyakuhei. Before turning and yelling a single word, Naruto swung his blade, making a deep gash in the snake's forehead, and continuing until he had eviscerated the entire snake's back with deep cuts, one of which would have sliced a man in half. Kashu. Screaming as its whole body burned to a crisp, the snake exploded into flame and vanished. With red eyes, Naruto scanned his surroundings as his red chakra changed the terrain, blazing ever stronger around him as he was unable to spot Orochimaru. You fucking coward. As Naruto's aura exploded, his eyes blazed, sending a wave through the surrounding area that caused it to burn and become parched. A syringe suddenly flew at Naruto. As he turned to face the syringe, Naruto watched it explode into dust. He glanced up a little at its thrower. From behind a bush, the third Hokage emerged. Numerous Anbu and other ninja followed, many of whose faces Naruto recognized. As the flames started to go out, Naruto's face softened for a moment and he started to yell. Then, all of a sudden, he looked around and saw hateful expressions everywhere he looked. They all wanted him dead. With a gasp, Naruto's face twisted and he dropped to his knees while holding his head. Run, 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 Naruto spoke in a tremulous voice. His whole body went slack, and he stayed that way for nearly a minute until he stood up with a frightful grin, his red eyes burning with a dark, evil fire. You expect to beat me, mortals, the puniest of the puny? God Almighty? As Naruto's chakra flames grew brighter, the third narrowed his eyes. Naruto, you are not a god. After giving him a long look, Naruto burst out laughing. You fool. You wouldn't be able to knock godhood even if it came up and slapped you. A frown curved Naruto's mouth. Quietly, he said, now you'll all die for wanting me to die. After vanishing, Naruto surfaced beside a nearby Anbu. The Anbu's jugular vein was sliced open as he fell in an instant. More came as Naruto forged a path of death, chopping down Anbu in a roughly semicircle and killing it at a terrible rate while gravely injuring others. He was nearly finished. When Naruto stopped, he had just sliced down a startled Kakashi. Hey, why aren't the rest of you? A white-haired man suddenly materialized in front of Naruto and used a seal to hit him in the stomach, interrupting him. The man with white hair said, Gogyo Kaien. When an Anbu rammed a needle into Naruto's arm, his eyes widened and he looked up, his teeth bared. He then fell into the white-haired man's arms as he slowly lowered him. The third approached the man from behind. I'm grateful, Jariah. Naruto awoke to a scene that seemed uncannily familiar. He stood up, his eyes watering. This room. All of the room's walls and ceilings were covered in seals, with the exception of the tiny spherical area surrounding Naruto's bed. With a soft smile on his face, the third entered as the door opened. I guess I've done it at last. Naruto spoke in a tremulous voice. A hush fell. Naruto, try not to worry about it, you weren't at fault. What are you saying? I killed a lot of people, Genjutsu. Naruto sighed in relief, but his eyes widened. Naruto grinned as he said, at least they'll be able to visit, as tears streamed down his cheeks. The third appeared perplexed. Go, for what reason would they have to come? With an arched eyebrow, Naruto raised his head. Naruto, this is just a short-term situation. As soon as we are certain that your other is securely contained, you will be released. The third smiled, as Naruto smiled as well. There'll be a rather painful hitch, though. Naruto looked at him strangely. You'll have to use these for medication after this, less times, but it'll be painful. The third took out a syringe with a colorless liquid in it. Naruto nodded as the third turned to leave, before stopping suddenly. Oh, and by the way, Orochimaru escaped. Began the third, Naruto's face hardening, but you and your team have all been allowed to take the final exam because you drove him away and protected your teammate. When you're released, you can pick up the final matches, which have already been decided. They will take place in 2 weeks. Naruto grinned broadly. As he left the room, the third said, take care. As the door closed, Naruto watched and collapsed back onto his bed, still grinning. A voice spoke into his head, and the smile vanished. How are you doing? Hello. The white-haired man was standing in his office, staring out a window, when the third entered. Thank you, Jariah. Jariah smiled at the third as she turned around. Hey, don't give me credit. I was merely in the vicinity. Jariah started talking again, and the third laughed. All right. How is Naruto doing? The third grinned. He's all right. It appears that the post-ceiling trauma has subsided. Jariah gave a wise nod. Whatever became of him? The third let out a sigh. I put a Gogyo Fuin on him when he was first released from the sealed room 2 years ago so that even when his more vicious persona was in control, he wouldn't be able to use the Kyuubi's chakra. Surprisingly, he used only his own chakra for his techniques, and it worked. Now, based on my imagination and what you saw, Orochimaru put another Gogyo Fuin on that seal. Jariah gave a nod. As an odd, numbered seal, the Gogyo Fuin somehow neutralizes, or voids, the power of the basic even numbered seal it is placed on, which is why it interferes with the Shiki Fujin. As previously stated, Naruto now has another Gogyo Fuin. Since 10 is an even number and 5 plus 5 equals 10, the Kyuubi's chakra is released. Jiraiya's gaze expanded. A strange little side effect I hadn't expected was the power of the Kyuubi's chakra multiplying tenfold because of the double seal. Jariah nearly stumbled as the third's expression darkened. I know the Shiki Fujin will be able to take the extensive modifications, but there might be some consequences we haven't thought about, or even know about, finished the third, and lit his pipe. As the two great ninja considered the implications of what had happened, Jariah could only nod. With the voice in his head, Naruto was having a great time trying to communicate. Konaha Kunoichi are really cute, don't you think? Damn, you twit. Sakura. I'd like a piece of that. Rower. Excuse me, who, hot damn, I wouldn't be able to last a minute without biting that piece of. Who are you? How to explain this to you? Naruto's eyebrow went up. I'm you. What? I am you. Only a different you. Like a mirror you. Your evil twin, if you like. I could go on and on about the Freudian nature of my establishment in the subconscious and consciousness in your mind, but I'll spare you. Naruto gave a headshake. You mean you're the guy who likes to, Naruto said, trembling as he stared. What? Do you expect me to finish your sentence for you, thereby creating a suspenseful scene and adhering to a cliché so boring that it's been reused a billion times in literature the world over? Naruto didn't say anything. You enjoy killing. Yes, well, it's the only break I get out of lazing around in the pool of repressed aggression lying in the back of your head. This is not a joke. You enjoy taking people's lives. You're a cold-blooded killer, you. Correction. You. What, clueless twit? I am you. If I'm a cold-blooded killer, then you are too. I am the ID to you, the super.ego. We are both parts of a repressed individual, only I exist naturally, and you exist through medication and disgustingly controlled desire. You, don't you remember, you clueless girly man? That incident with the big red eyes? Your psychological spectrum was overturned, you great huge mental case. I know you've read about this crap. I can see it in here. Right. You know the iceberg diagram, right? The super.ego and the ego are naturally on the top, providing you with your basic moral spectrum. That incident caused your entire psyche to do a flip. Now the ID and the super.ego are on the top, the ego, that is, the mediator between them, is in your subconscious, sleeping like a baby. Now the ID and the super.ego are vying for control of your body-mind. You may be wondering why I'm on top and you, the super.ego, need to be encouraged to emerge. No, it's not because you're a bad little naughty boy. No, it's not because you catch yourself taking little looks at soccer's behind. Naruto started to object, but he soon realized who he was speaking to, so he stopped. In actuality, multiple personality disorder would affect a normal person. In other words, you have two personalities that are evenly matched, competing for control and ruining your social graces in the process. You, however, have so damn many repressed emotions from your childhood, the villagers treating you like crap, the adults trying to kill you, the children destroying your self, confidence, etc., that your ID, formed of repressed feelings of aggression, has become stronger. You aren't a complete super.ego in the first place, technically speaking. You really haven't had time to take in enough positive feelings from anyone. You would be a cocky, chivalrous knight with a big ego if you were a full one. You resemble Jekyll more than Hyde. You even have your own desires, in fact. What would a psychoanalyst think of this? Aha. Anyway. That's it. The voice said, all the reasons why you're so unbelievably messed up in your head. Naruto felt what appeared to be a casual wave. Naruto was unable to speak. How were you able to get in touch with me? Your mental blocks are overridden by the trauma of the Kyuubi's chakra. Are we attempting to shift the topic? Aha. I wonder how it feels to discover that you are a lesser manifestation of a deranged child's innermost thoughts. For a moment there was total silence. It is confusing. The voice in Naruto's head laughed, and he winced. Avoid worrying too much about yourself. I doubt I'll be able to communicate with you at all. I'll spare my torture on you. Aha. This is a side note. You will most likely have better control over your chakras. That Gogyo Kaian chipped off a portion of the old fogey's seal in addition to destroying Orochimaru's. Not enough to do crap like a Rasengan, and likely not enough even to be able to walk on water without your pads, but you'll probably be able to do a basic bunshin without it blowing up in your face anymore. Rasengan. Ignore it. I believe my time in your mind is coming to an end. Your foolish seal is repairing itself. The next time you go out, don't kill anyone. Shut the hell up, you great huge hairy. The other voice seemed to fade away as Naruto fixed his gaze on the ceiling. He continued to think as he gradually fell asleep without pausing. 2 days after his conversation, Naruto left the Hokage building. The man with the white hair was in front of him. Hi, Naruto. It's been a while. Jariah.san. Good to see you once more, smiling, Naruto said. It had been a long time, but Jariah smiled. Hey, I might as well prepare you for the test since I'm already here. You haven't done much preparation, have you? Nervously, Naruto rubbed the back of his head and nodded. All right, let's go. On the way, we can catch up on the past. Naruto nodded and started to follow Jariah while anxiously gazing up at the sky. The dense forest that surrounded the outskirts of Konaha was traversed by Naruto and his white-haired companion. Jariah spoke to no one in particular about a variety of topics while Naruto's gaze remained fixed on the piece of paper he was holding. The lane that each competitor would take to win the competition was displayed to Naruto as his eyes settled on a tournament divider. Naruto muttered, "I'll be facing off against," to Jiraiya's attention, Hyuga Neji. With his eyes closed and an eyebrow raised, Jariah nodded his head. He's famous as last year's top-ranking pupil and number 1 rookie. He's also, like every other Hyuga, stuck up and a steadfast narcissist, from what I've heard. Calmly, Naruto folded the paper and slipped it into a pocket of his white pants. The Hyuga are known as mainly dependent on their specialized taijutsu, the gentle fist, or jukin. When Naruto started, Jiraiya gave a wise nod as Naruto went on. Would it be wise to concentrate on long-range tactics using shuriken? No, I've fought a few Hyuga and I know from experience that they'll chew long-range specialists up and spit them out, Jiraiya replied. Because of the Hakeshokaden, right? I thought so. I won't be able to use any elemental techniques, either, because of my chakra control, Jiraiya let out a sigh. A Hyuga's going to be your worst enemy at your current condition. Naruto closed his eyes and nodded. I could always use their famed overconfidence against them. Jiraiya grinned. Hey. Yeah. Abruptly, Naruto turned to face Jiraiya. Jiraiya-san, I need you to look over something I attempted while in the sealed room. I had a lot of free time, and I'd read a lot about seals and how they function. As Naruto unclasped and took off his lower arm guard, Jiraiya gasped and saw an incredibly complex web of seals that appeared to have been painted on with blood. That's Kachiyose no Jutsu, are you expecting to use that in the exam? The arm guard was changed by Naruto. Well, no, I just wanted to check if the seals were in the right places. Jiraiya let out a sigh. I can't help you with that. You have a different contract from mine, so I don't know the seal makeup that would be most accurate for you. Naruto gave a nod. I don't think it'd be very useful, especially since the Falcon wouldn't have full flight range. But that wasn't the only trick I've picked up. Jiraiya put his thumb to his chin. You remember that I've learned the Hiraishin, right? Jiraiya gave a nod. Naruto claimed, well, now, I've honed it a bit, until I can do this, as he took several steps backward. About 20 feet from where he had been, Naruto came to a stop. He disappeared suddenly and reappeared instantly once again, next to Jiraiya. Jiraiya let out a gasp. The Hiraishin had been used to perfection by Naruto. He used it almost as well as the person who invented it. So, what do you think I can learn that doesn't require any chakra control at all? Jiraiya considered the question for a long time. I've learned, over my years of travel, an art of taijutsu that is usually used by the Toad summons. It requires little to no chakra control and is relatively easy to pick up. It's a mixture of hand combat and swordplay, though the former is used less frequently. I've discovered various ways to adapt the style for use by humans, and I think you'd greatly benefit from it. Naruto smiled. With a gesture toward the Raijin fastened to Naruto's belt, Jiraiya stated, however, you won't be using that sword. Naruto gave Jiraiya an odd look. Taking a scroll from his pocket, Jiraiya unfolded it and ran his finger across the parchment while biting it to extract blood. 2 katana swords of moderate length dropped into his hands with a poof. He extended them to Naruto. Naruto took the 2 swords from Jiraiya after giving his Raijin sword a sorrowful glance. The swords struck the ground with a dull but loud thud, as his hand instantly dropped to the ground. As Naruto labored to lift each weapon in his own hands, Jiraiya laughed and said, they're heavy, it's really the basis of the style, he. Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto collapsed wearily onto his couch. It had been the 3rd night since his training had begun and he was still worn out at the end of each day. The swords, as he had discovered, were made of a very heavy metal, in order to provide the proper leverage for the techniques practiced in the style he was learning. They were also significantly wider than normal swords, a fact that he had not noticed when he had first seen them. Naruto stretched out, and swung his head left and right, hearing satisfying cracks at either side. Instantly, he grabbed a rather heavy scroll from the side of the couch. He unfolded it and started reading, his gaze sweeping over the lengthy passages of text, broken now and then by the strange image of a marking or symbol. Suddenly, Naruto heard knocks at his door and looked up. He got up, put the scroll back on the little table from which it had been removed, and walked to the door, squirming a little as pain shot up his leg from a strained muscle that had not yet healed. He pulled the door open. The pink-haired girl in front of him looked up at his face, and he exclaimed, Sakura-san, in surprise. She blushed as Naruto gave her a perplexed look. Naruto. Hi, you're back. heard you'd been discharged and she stammered. A hush fell. Despite his body aching, Naruto finally said, "Oh, how rude of me. Please, Sakura-san, come in." His smile was brilliant. Sakura returned his smile before entering the room. She held out a basket of fruit and said abruptly, "Naruto, this is for you." After removing it from her grasp, Naruto went into his kitchen and put it somewhere. Sakura's first impression was of the room's general neatness. It was positively spotless, and everything was in its rightful place. The scrolls were all placed neatly on a labeled scroll racks. The books were placed in alphabetical order on labeled shelves, and what an amount of shelves indeed. The walls of the living area, even the ones below the windows, had all been made into shelving space for books and the like. Sakura noted 2 couches around a lacquered wood table and promptly sat herself down on one of them, all the while admiring the orderliness present in the space she was in. Soon after, Naruto entered with a little tray that had a teapot and 2 bamboo cups arranged carefully on top of it. He set it on the lacquered table and filled both cups with green tea. Naruto calmly sipped his tea and asked, "So, how have you been, Sakura-san?" "I'm alright. I was in the hospital for therapy for a little while, but it was nothing serious. I heard you were put into some treatment for something. What happened?" The question and the statement before it made Naruto tense a little. "Well, it was really nothing serious. Just a bit of trauma. Do you remember anything after Orochimaru?" Sakura trembled slightly when the sannin was brought up. "I fell unconscious after he threw me into something and woke up in the hospital. I guess that Sasuke-kun helped bring me there." Naruto gave a nod. "Speaking of Sasuke, how is he?" Sakura gave a small smile. "He turned out almost woundless, though he had to attend the same therapy as the one I attended." She hesitated. "He also wanted me to thank you for getting us the chance to fight in the final round." "How did I help in getting us into the final round again?" Naruto asked, his expression bewildered. Sakura laughed. Sakura smiled and said, "Oh, you got a scroll all by yourself and gave it to the examiners soon after Sasuke and I arrived, then you collapsed." A brief silence fell. He instantly smiled again, thinking, must have been a decoy or something. Naruto sipped from his cup once more and remarked, "Ahaha. That's right. I must be having amnesia, hee." For a while, they sat in silence, Sakura just sipping her tea and Naruto contemplating the situation. Sakura let out a sudden, sorrowful sigh. "I've been training non-stop with Kakashi. Sensei's friend Kurenai, it's tiring." Naruto grinned. "I'm sure you'll be able to make it through. You'll be a force to be reckoned with for sure during the matches." Naruto hesitated for a second. "Why can't Kakashi teach you himself?" Sakura let out another sigh. As she sipped her cup, she remarked, "He's training Sasuke up in the mountains." Thanking his lucky stars for Jiraiya's assistance, Naruto nodded. Sakura had to leave soon, and after consuming her last cup of tea, she found herself getting up to go. They had discussed everything from her concerns about the chunin exam to how to make green tea. Naruto was just happy to have someone to talk to, and Sakura was happy to have someone who would listen to her. She said, "Bye, thanks for the tea," and turned to leave. Unaware that Naruto could see her entire back as she left, she walked out Naruto's door. After remembering what his other had said, Naruto flushed a lot and continued to strike himself inward for a while. As he slept that night, he thought he heard a faint laugh coming from the back of his mind. The next morning, Naruto and Jariah were at training field 30.2. Numerous wooden blocks had been stacked close by, and Jariah had placed them all over the place. "I'm going to teach you one of the Toad's trademark attacks." Jariah reached for Naruto's swords, pulled them out, and walked over to a block of wood. Jariah appeared to be wearing different shin guards, Naruto observed. Jariah suddenly leapt high into the air and started to descend over the wooden block while holding the swords high. He exclaimed, "Gamma! Kata! Yatai Kuzushi!" as his downward acceleration's retardation started to rise quickly. He swung the swords in a broad downward arc just as he was ready to hit the wooden blocks. Where the wooden block had been, a huge cloud of dust and dirt had formed, so Naruto covered his eyes. With 2 very deep gash marks on the ground beneath him, Jariah was visible standing in a striking crater as the dust settled. Splinters were all that remained of the block of wood. Jariah grinned as she turned. "Your turn." Naruto had discovered that the shin guards were chakra. Seal-weighted, meaning they had the capacity to suddenly gain weight. A small amount of chakra pumped into them would activate them and send them to the designated weight. They also didn't require any chakra control. Naruto had already begun planning how to employ the technique with the Hiraishin. With a sigh, Naruto discovered that he was on a well-known street. There was never anyone on the way home. His home was, after all, located in a somewhat run-down district of the otherwise beautiful village. He realized that the Hokage had not put him in such an unimpressive location out of animosity or spite, but rather out of a desire to make his home unobtrusive. After all, if people knew that the nine-tailed brat lived in such a filthy place, they would not want to attack him, and they were likely satisfied that he was clearly rotting in his dilapidated cesspool of a house. Regardless of the location, the Hokage had surreptitiously made Naruto's apartment remarkably functional and aesthetically pleasing. Fortunately, the landlord had also shown empathy for Naruto's situation and paid regular maintenance, which Naruto greatly valued. Naruto took in his surroundings as he looked around. There was not a human in sight, but from such a place, that was to be expected. For fear of having to pay protection money or something similar, no sane person would open a respectable business within 500 meters of this location. Those people were unaware that this was actually one of the safer, albeit seedier, parts of Konaha, and that the thugs had moved away after years of having no businesses to raid. Naruto chuckled at the idea. The subject of reverse psychology was a lot of fun. Naruto approached his door slowly. He reflected that he could have Hiraishin Ed back. After entering his home and shutting the door, Naruto shrugged. After getting ready for bed in his bathroom, he left a short while later and collapsed onto the bed. After lying quietly for a long time, he slowly rolled over and started staring at the ceiling. The words, "I still haven't answered that question," came out of his mouth. Some things were beyond Naruto's comprehension. He now needed to add something else to that list. The idea of valuable individuals. If Naruto couldn't figure out what it meant after all this time, then who could? The moment had arrived. He had learned the basics of the Gamma Kata, but the training had been intense. Even though he had only been training for 2 weeks, he had picked up the skills remarkably quickly and was likely prepared for anything a haughty Hyuga could throw at him. One day prior to the final round of the chunin exam, Jariah and Naruto sat in a little ramen stall by the side of the road. "Miso ramen for me in the runt, please," shouted Jariah. Naruto surveyed the booth's interior design. It was rather simple, with only a small sign up front that read, "Ichiraku Ramen, Painter" as the only identifying feature. He let out a sigh. His favorite food wasn't ramen. In fact, it was at the bottom. It tasted like what it was meant to be. Fast food, was unhealthy, and lacked any vitamins. It appeared that Jariah enjoyed it. Jariah said cheerfully, "Naruto, you have to learn to indulge yourself now and then." When his ramen arrived, Naruto shrugged and separated his bamboo chopsticks. Naruto had not seen the girl who had brought it smile, but she had a nice smile on her face. As Naruto started to slowly stir his ramen to combine the different ingredients, she leaned on the counter next to him and said, "You're new here." Naruto turned to face her and gave her a small nod, expecting a cynical remark or a heartbroken reference to a deceased relative. The girl abruptly said, "I like you. You're cute." Naruto nearly dropped his chopsticks. Jariah slurped loudly at his ramen, apparently unaware of what was happening, while Naruto stared at her in stunned silence. The fact that she was speaking to him politely and without using a lot of four-letter words was what really shocked Naruto, not so much the declaration of love. The civilian population, on the other hand, was generally unable to comprehend how deep Naruto's story went and typically stopped at, "Hey, he's the Kyuubi vessel." As a result, they treated him with annoyance or general animosity, whereas the active ninja population of Konaha treats Naruto with respect and friendship. Or those he's met, anyway. At this point, however, the aforementioned declaration of love leapt to the surface and bit Naruto. The serving girl laughed and left, and he flushed. Reluctantly, Naruto went back to his ramen and started eating it. He was suddenly pushed in the side. Jariah cheekily remarked, "He, got a girl on you already, what a charmer." After blushing a little, Naruto resumed eating his ramen. The store owner and his daughter waved at Naruto and Jariah as they walked away, and Naruto turned around and grinned. Maybe it was okay to indulge occasionally. The following day, Naruto woke up and put on his white shirt and black pants that were a little loose. He strapped on all his gear slowly, thinking that today was the day of reckoning, until he reached his swords. With some effort, he raised them both and strapped them onto his back in a crude X shape, with the scabbards crossing over one another and the weapon handles visible behind Naruto's shoulders. Along with other items, he prepared bundles of ruined kunai and put them in his waist pouches. He reluctantly inserted 2 syringes, each wrapped in a foam substance that absorbs shock, into the pouch. After grabbing 3 apples, he left through the door. He wanted to take a look around the stadium. It had been closed for general landscape modifications and to avoid said scoping, so this was the first day he would be able to see it. Feeling the familiar metallic coldness of his Raijin dangling from his side, Naruto grinned. Despite his inability to use the Tenkan style, it would likely be a more effective weapon than a kunai. Entering the stadium, Naruto made his way to the competitor's corner. There were just 2 people present. He remembered one of the leaf ninja from his year, Shika. Something, and a red-headed sand dot ninja. Naruto acknowledged their presence by nodding, and his old classmate did the same, but the red-headed one didn't. Naruto thought, how rude, as he looked up at the first fighter. He swore upon seeing both his own and his rival's names. With a resigned sigh, he made his way to the viewing gap to look around and plan. The announcer exclaimed, "Welcome ladies and gentlemen, to the combined affiliation chunin examination final round," as the assembled crowds let out raucous applause. The current Kazekage and the 3rd Hokage were sitting on a box seat, surrounded by guards from their respective villages. Sakura had just come in, Naruto noticed as he glanced around. She went to talk to one of the proctors, smiling and nodding courteously. Naruto saw Hyuga Neji sitting quietly in a dark corner, staring out the window with his arms folded. When Naruto wondered where Sasuke was, he came to the conclusion that Kakashi had the best idea. When he heard the announcer call his name and that of his opponents, he snapped back to reality and was soon led away by a chunin proctor in the vicinity. Sakura gave him a "good luck" smile, which he immediately returned when he glanced back a little. There was almost total silence as Naruto stepped into the field. He glanced around, feeling discouraged by the looks he was receiving from some members of the audience. He quickly dismissed it and turned to face the examiner. He nearly waved at his friend as his face brightened, but Shiranui Genma quickly waved no, and Naruto retreated in understanding. Even though he had already gone over the rules several times, he paid close attention as Genma went over them. The 2 contestants positioned themselves on opposing sides of the field. His opponent gasped in surprise and gave him a disbelieving look when Naruto abruptly took a syringe out of his pouch and stabbed it rather violently into his neck. Shaking his head, Naruto felt the serum seeping into his body. He nodded in response to Genma's nod. "You may begin." With lightning speed, Naruto launched a kunai over his opponent's head. Despite his sly smile, Hyuga Neji appeared alert to the failed attempt when Naruto abruptly vanished. "You may begin." With lightning speed, Naruto launched a kunai over his opponent's head. Despite his sly smile, Hyuga Neji appeared alert to the failed attempt when Naruto abruptly vanished. After searching the immediate perimeter in vain, Neji's pale eyes reached a concerning conclusion. Neji leapt to the side, and a moment later, a loud explosion erupted from where he had been, and a massive cloud of dust was immediately lifted. Neji frowned and muttered a single word while glancing at the dust plume. Byakugan. An indication of the renowned Hyuga bloodline, the white eye, or Byakugan, was the sudden bulging of the veins surrounding Neji's eyes. Slowly emerging from the dust, the figure in that plume appeared to be still. As most people would when witnessing such an absurd display of strength, Neji stared in awe at the crater his opponent was standing in. Naruto suddenly charged at Neji and swung his sword viciously at him. Neji backflipped, barely avoiding the incredibly quick swing, and landed skillfully on an arena wall, where his chakra instantly adhered to it. With his Juken ready, he hurried to attack Naruto, but Naruto abruptly vanished once more. Expecting another dive. Bomb! Neji threw a kunai up, but it sailed away without incident. Embarrassed at his own foolishness, Neji snarled. A few feet from where he was supposed to land, Naruto reappeared out of nowhere, holding a spherical ball with explosive tags. As soon as he touched down, Neji started to spin, and Naruto gave him a cunning smile before hurling the ball at the newly emerging chakra dome in a rather feeble trajectory. A lot of tiny shuriken exploded from the sphere's broken shell, creating an amazing show as they bounced off Neji's Kaden and scattered across the battlefield. The ball detonated rather anticlimactically, barely more than a puff of smoke and a flash of flame. Neji smirked and stopped spinning. "Do you seriously expect that pathetic display to allow you to?" he started, stopping, irritated as Naruto suddenly disappeared again. Neji quickly sidestepped when Naruto emerged behind him, then somersaulted once more when he got close to where he was supposed to land. Naruto flickered from various points, reappearing suddenly near Neji and swinging his blade, keeping Neji on his toes. Neji abruptly came to a halt in the center of the battleground. Naruto swiftly materialized beside him, but scowled upon noticing Neji's smile. As the crowd cheered, Neji muttered, "Enough of this. You're in my Hokage." He was preparing for the Hyuga clan's ultimate fighting tactic. His fingers moved at a speed that was nearly imperceptible to the human eye as he struck, making a few connections but not immediately following through. Neji gave a startled gasp when Naruto abruptly reappeared behind him and stabbed the ground with his swords. Neji spun around and charged, but Naruto's leverage and push on his two grounded swords, along with the weights in his boots, caused him to take a hard kick to the face. Holding his nose in rage, Neji flew back into a wall. It, like the rest of his presumably broken face, was bleeding pretty heavily. Why? You? He muttered, stumbling shakily to his feet. Naruto vanished and resurfaced beside Neji, who used his leverage to knock him into the dust as Neji's palm rushed in his direction. Neji sprang to his feet and charged at Naruto once more. Naruto vanished and reappeared slightly ahead of Neji, his fist extended in a relaxed position. Audience members flinched as Neji stopped just in time, only to have a snap kick from below slam his jaw in. Then, with a quick uppercut, Naruto kicked off Neji's chest and landed skillfully on his feet, while Neji landed roughly on his back. Neji once again struggled to his feet. It's my destiny to win. Naruto suddenly appeared next to him and gave him a sock to his stomach, doubling him over as Naruto kneed him in the chest, bringing him to his knees. Neji suddenly sprang to his feet, his Hokage field expanding from his feet. He struck, apparently striking Naruto, but as soon as the next one came, he hit nothing. With another growl, Neji rolled to the side and cursed as Naruto came up behind him and gave him a rough kick between the shoulder blades. Neji leapt to his feet once more and rolled aside. He ran with a palm outstretched toward Naruto. Sighing, Naruto tossed him aside once more, drawing boos from the audience. Naruto let out another sigh. We could go on like this forever, as Naruto raised his Raijin sword to the Hyuga's neck with his right hand. Neji sprang forward and growled once more before abruptly stopping. Or could we? Naruto whispered. With two kunai in his hands, Neji drew back angrily but then ran forward once more. There were shouts of encouragement coming from different parts of the crowd. His face was in the dirt, the blood dripping onto the ground, when he was abruptly pulled back by pressure from his leg. Roughly turning, he saw Naruto clinging to his leg. Neji staggered back to his feet and kicked out. He pushed his hand forward once more and was flung back. To the audience's gasps, Neji stumbled to his feet once more. His lips were swollen as he muttered, "I must prove." Suddenly, a few meters from Neji, Naruto emerged. He was in the reverse stance with just one of his swords. As he rushed forward, Naruto exclaimed, "Gamma! Kata! Gamma Dosuzan!" His weapon's blunt end grabbed Neji by the chest and pulled him forward until it struck an arena wall, creating a huge crater and most likely shattering something inside the Hyuga or outside of it. With his sword in its scabbard, Naruto stumbled backwards in silence. Some observed his hands abruptly becoming unexplainably limp and resting by his sides. As Neji's limp body was seen descending the crater slowly, he left it in silence. "Winner is," Genma said. Neji stumbled to his feet again and muttered, "W. Wait," once more. Genma gestured for them to go on after giving a nod. From Naruto's end, a cry of exasperation could be heard. Once more, Naruto and Neji were positioned in the middle of the arena. Naruto let out a sudden cry. To the astonishment of Neji and the crowd, he yelled, "Ow! My arms! I think his Jukin got me, hot damn, they hurt." Genma approached him with a raised eyebrow. With his arms appearing to hang limp, Naruto exclaimed, "I'm giving up. My pain tolerance has been breached. Gah." Genma shook his head in disapproval of the blatantly theatrical performance. Neji just snarled. He shouted, "I don't need your pity." Genma looked at Naruto's arms and shook his head. He whispered, "They really are Jukin hits here." Genma stood up and started talking, and Neji's eyes grew wide. Because competitor Uzumaki Naruto has forfeited his match, the winner by default is Hyuga Neji. The crowd erupted in cheers as Neji stood stunned. Naruto gave him a kind smile. With Genma's assistance, he left Neji in the middle of the arena to consider what he had said before leaving, saying, Hitting a ninja who knows the Hiraishin technique. You've proven more than you think, Hyuga. Good job." Soon after, to the astonished looks of the gathered candidates, Naruto entered the waiting room. He shoved past them and took a seat in front of the window. Sakura joined him shortly after. She said, "So, what happened?" Naruto gave her a strange smile as he looked at her. "Nothing. That's what they left it at." Not long after, the next match came. Aburame Shino and an unidentified sand ninja entered the arena, and Naruto watched. As the audience cheered, he declared, "Now, on to the second match of the competition. We have with us Aburame Shino of the prestigious Aburame family of Konaha." Cheers broke out once more, but on a smaller scale. His opponent, the son of the mighty Yondaime Kazekage, Kankuro, again. Similar to what had happened with him and Neji, Naruto watched idly as Genma spoke to them and explained the rules. The Sand Shinobi, who was now known as Kankuro, abruptly held up his hand. "I give. I don't want to waste your time on a match I'm going to lose," he said, much to the chagrin of the audience. He waved them off and simply jumped up onto the balcony. Genma simply shrugged and announced the beginning of the next match, as well as Shino's victory. Naruto observed that Shino's normally indifferent expression was replaced by an odd one. Sakura's sudden standing startled Naruto until he realized what was about to happen. As he slowly left the room, he gave her a thumbs up and smiled. Shortly after, she showed up strolling alongside her opponent, an Inuzuka Kiba. Here we have the beautiful Haruno Sakura of Konaha, facing off against another denizen of Konaha, Inuzuka Kiba of the famed Inuzuka strain. The crowd cheered. Genma went through the motions again, pausing before requesting that they start, just in case something similar happened to Kankuro. He yelled, "Begin!" and the two opponents leapt back, Kiba just running in a semicircle and Sakura drawing a wakizashi. Abruptly, Kiba changed into a contorted drill-like form and charged Sakura. Sakura was smashed into a nearby wall as Naruto watched in horror as the attack connected. Her opponent hurried to help her, as if equally concerned. The Sakura vanished in an instant, and her opponent, Kiba, was left at knife point. Before another twisted vortex slammed into Sakura's side and revealed another Kiba, Naruto nearly erupted in cheers. Sakura suddenly burst into cherry blossom petals as she crashed into a tree. At that moment, the two Kibas were thrown from various angles and had to dodge a great number of wakizashi that appeared dangerous and were all sharp enough to impale. Blood was dripping from a side wound when one Kiba abruptly fell to one side. Naruto grinned as he started to comprehend Sakura's scheme. All of the wakizashi were phony. Because Kiba was protected by genjutsu, Sakura had a cover to strike, harming Kiba and making the illusion seem more realistic. The wounded Kiba soon joined the remaining Kiba, who abruptly changed back into a vortex and started circling the arena's perimeter. They both raced around the arena at unbearable speeds until one of them abruptly changed direction and started running inside the arena's perimeter while the other kept going in the same direction. Sakura appeared out of nowhere, her chakra reserves apparently depleted by the use of the genjutsu, and Naruto nodded solemnly. With their individual tornadoes spinning even faster, both Kibas started a mad dash to Sakura's position, determined to deal as much damage as possible. Sakura abruptly vanished and then reappeared close to the entrance. When the two Kibas abruptly changed their course and charged at Sakura's new location, it appeared as though they were headed for collision. Sakura abruptly raised her hand as Naruto watched in horror as they proceeded towards her on a death roll. She exclaimed, "I give up," as the two tornadoes came together to attack her. Given Sakura's imminent evisceration, Naruto closed his eyes, but upon noticing the silence, he opened them once more. To Naruto's relief, Genma exclaimed, "Winner, Inuzuka Kiba," while clutching a Kiba in each hand. Later, with a look of shame on her face, Sakura approached the box, again with shyness. "Hey, don't look so down, that was a great plan, great fight." Sakura instantly became happier. Naruto laughed and said, "Haha, the only Team 7 member who hasn't lost is Sasuke." Sakura chuckled softly before continuing to gaze into the arena without expression. Naruto grinned anxiously. Soon after, the next match started, with a Sand Kunoichi and the slothful young man fighting, but Naruto ignored them. Sakura worried him more than anything else. With an inward sigh, he considered how he could be of assistance. Human relations had never been his strong suit, and this was a very perplexing situation to begin with. First of all, he had no idea what was upsetting her. Second, she appeared sensitive. Third, he was unsure of how to assist her. He gazed blankly at the arena scene, where both competitors appeared to be doing nothing at all. Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto was startled out of his reverie by a loud voice. Genma, who was clearly disinterested in the rather mediocre performance, declared, "Shikamaru has withdrawn." Temari is the winner by default. When the rude, red-haired sand ninja abruptly got up and walked out of the room, Naruto stopped laughing. Sakura muttered, "It's Sasuke's turn next." Naruto scowled. Sakura had clearly not recovered. Where is Sasuke, anyway?" he asked, grinning broadly. Sakura shrugged, looking around. Naruto gave her an odd look. Is Sakura not smitten with Sasuke? This was serious. Soon after, the red-haired sand ninja appeared on the field with his huge gourd slung over his back. He glared straight ahead after giving Genma an agitated glance. Genma let out a sigh. He checked his watch and declared, "Gaara of the Sand shall win this victory if Uchiha Sasuke does not arrive within 10 minutes. From the crowd came murmurs, which gradually became louder. Gaara's expression twisted into one of intense annoyance as he frowned. Naruto watched with fatigue. This was undoubtedly not a popular exam. 3 opponents had withdrawn. No, 4. And the renowned and expected Uchiha survivor was inexplicably missing. Like Naruto, Sakura didn't seem overly concerned and instead appeared a little bored. There was also a lack of enthusiasm among those gathered at the balcony area. Naruto nearly laughed again. What happened to the commotion of those earlier occasions, when celebrations and the like were held to honor them? At this point, it appeared to be a very serious funeral with irrational onlookers. Naruto's thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a flurry of leaves. In the center of the stadium, with the Uchiha all in black and his teacher holding his perverted book, Sasuke and Kakashi appeared out of nowhere. Kakashi grinned. "Sorry we're late." As evidenced by the irate jeering and haphazard flinging of blunt objects into the arena, Kakashi's disguised smile clearly failed to appease the audience. Naruto gave his teacher a scowl. This was unworthy of the renowned copy ninja from Konaha. It was inevitable that Konaha's reputation would suffer in some way from his tardiness and rudeness. Naruto glanced at Sakura and turned back right away, grinning as he saw her face light up. Even if he wasn't the one who made her smile, it didn't matter. Everything was fine as long as she did. Before long, Naruto's gaze returned to the arena. As the 2 opponents made their way slowly to the middle of the ring, Kakashi was leaving. In order to prepare for another round of reciting his pre-fight speech, Genma quickly stumbled to the middle of the ring. Naruto observed the crowd as some of them started to display painted cardboard representations of the Uchiha fan, clearly casting their ballots for Sasuke. He gave a small snort. Fangirls, fangirls. How soon would they find out? However, the most anticipated match of the competition soon began as Genma's cries of "Begin!" reverberated on the walls. Sasuke started throwing the shuriken right away, aiming it directly at Gaara, but the shuriken stuck harmlessly to a wall of sand that abruptly rose up from the ground in front of him. Naruto frowned at the sight as Sasuke, seemingly unfazed, began to rush incredibly fast to Gaara, becoming a blur mid-dash. Suddenly, another sand shield rose up, this time on Gaara's right, blocking a potentially fatal kick. After that, Sasuke hurried away once more, making numerous appearances and going through the cycle several times before Gaara abruptly took off. As Naruto saw Sasuke running up a wall while Gaara was struggling to stand, the Konoha crowd let out roaring cheers and the sand crowd gasped. Electricity leapt off, scorching the walls around him, and Sasuke's hands started pulsing with a glaring blue light, suddenly attracting everyone's attention. Gazing directly at Gaara, who had by that point started to form a sand shield, Sasuke held his hand downward. Sasuke roared its name as he charged with amazing speed, his attack screaming behind him and leaving a blue trail. Chidori. The attack ended as quickly as it had started, and Sasuke's arm was hidden from view by being crammed into Gaara's now spherical sand shield as the dust from the charge cleared. The audience watched in anticipation, and there was silence. Sasuke was thrown roughly back against the wall from which he had charged when the arena was rocked by a massive sand explosion. Startled by the sudden movement, Naruto turned abruptly. The odd sand shinobi who had forfeited his match against Shino, who was known as Konkuro at the time, said, "It's been fun, kids. Gotta go." Konkuro nodded as he turned to face his sister, the blonde fan with Temari. Suddenly, they vanished in smoke plumes. Naruto got up right away and turned to face the crowd, who were gradually drifting off to sleep. Gently, he said, "Genjutsu." Sakura muttered a muffled "Kai," and nodded, putting an end to the genjutsu that was encroaching. Accompanied by 2 other Konoha shinobi, Sakura's adversary Kiba, and the slothful boy Shikamaru, Naruto nodded and leapt with Sakura. Suddenly, An incoming force caused one of the arena's walls to collapse violently, when a massive three-headed snake burst through, shocking the now awake crowd and sending them reeling. Naruto and his 3 friends were in awe. Naruto observed that Gaara had vanished, most likely captured by the Sand Shinobi. Numerous active and inactive ninja hurried to stop enemy shinobi who had started to rush into the arena as the civilians flocked to the exits. Naruto assumed that more combat would be taking place outside the arena. "Guys, I'm sorry to start commanding you all of a sudden, but we need to help the civilians escape. Kiba, was it? Please use your Suga to clear a path for those blocked by wreckage." Naruto started off. After a moment of hesitation, Kiba nodded and, as quickly as their legs would allow, he and his dog headed for the closest blocked exit. An enemy ninja suddenly materialized behind Naruto, brandishing a kunai and ready to attack. Naruto quickly spun around and used his Raijin sword to cut the ninja's legs off of his torso. He turned quickly and gestured to Sasuke. His tone shifted slightly to one that was softer and more composed as he said, "Sakura, please go and handle Sasuke." Sakura looked at the corpse of the fallen ninja with awe and disgust, but she immediately obeyed. Naruto looked around, aware of the confusion as Konaha's ninja battled their unidentified attackers. At least here, they appeared to be winning. Ignoring his comrade's bored muttering, Naruto said, "Shikamaru, please do whatever you can to assist those around you. I'm going after the trio that fled." Leaping onto the massive arena wall, Naruto peered down into the thick forest that the sand trio had fled into. There was a slight movement about 3 kilometers from where he was, and he cursed. He leapt to the ground, swung around, and landed cleanly on a tree, racing forward. He pursued the 3, gradually catching up to them, until he abruptly realized that Kankuro, one of them, was missing. He realized quickly that he was in danger and kicked back on a tree trunk, barely escaping a puppet with a blade that had been thrown in a hurry. With a thunk of the puppet, he threw a kunai and somersaulted back, only to have it quickly pulled out and flung to the ground. Unaware that his opponent had read his strategy, Naruto cursed. With a swift motion, Naruto drew the Raijin and swung it, severing one of his opponent's puppet hands. A thick cloud of what appeared to be insects suddenly materialized, pushing Kankuro into the brush and halting Naruto's progress. Shino landed on a branch after appearing from above. He glanced at Naruto and then down at Kankuro. Shino sank to Kankuro's level and said, "Go, Uzumaki Naruto. This is my fight." Without wasting any time, Naruto resumed his pursuit. After running from branch to branch, Naruto halted when he saw that his 2 targets had halted in the middle of a heavily forested area. The young man, Gaara, appeared to be perched on a tree, holding his head in agony or annoyance. With clenched teeth, Naruto launched a kunai. Gaara's head abruptly rose as it flew, and sand started to pour from his gourd. When the kunai struck the branch they were on, Temari, the kunoichi, noticed. Naruto drew his 2 swords in a flash as she prepared her battle fan. As Temari started to charge, a hideous-looking arm abruptly pulled her back and threw her back. With a gasp, Naruto leapt backwards, barely avoiding a massive claw that was aimed at him. As the creature's arm drew back, Naruto swore and hurled 3 kunai, each of which lodged itself in the arm. Even down to its red hair, the creature's right side resembled Gaara, but his left side appeared hideous, almost demonic. The creature roared as it flew at Naruto, who abruptly vanished and reappeared behind it, swinging his blades in a steep downward arc. The creature was unfazed by the clattering blades as they struck its hideous left arm. Immediately, Naruto launched himself into the air, spun around, and bounded cleanly off a nearby tree before racing in the direction of the creature. He yelled, "Gamma Dosuzan," and swung his blade in an exact replica of the attack he had used on Neji, except this time the bladed end was upturned. As Naruto continued his rush, the blade made a heavy connection with the creature's stomach, dragging it until he abruptly stopped and smashed the creature into a nearby tree. As the creature was thrown through the tree and fell into the forest's depths, the impact cracked the tree's trunk, causing it to collapse. Naruto looked down slowly, but he quickly retaliated as the enormous monster arm reappeared, a move that would have undoubtedly resulted in Naruto's decapitation if he hadn't retreated. The branch he was standing on suddenly gave way, forcing Naruto to kick back once more and land on another branch, which also gave way right away. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked down and saw that the monster had grown another enormous arm and that its human side had seemingly vanished behind a strange, vaguely animalistic armor that included eyes and a big, smiling mouth. The creature laughed and swung its arm, yelling, "Die, you little runt," as 8 enormous sand shuriken erupted. With a curse, Naruto fell to the ground right away, sheathing his blades and throwing a bundle of explosive notes at the creature. As the bundle exploded, harmlessly, behind it, the creature smirked and quickly stepped aside. The smirk vanished quickly as numerous kunai abruptly lodged themselves in its back, while numerous others dispersed, protruding into nearby trees and patches of ground. In an effort to get rid of the kunai, the creature screamed in rage and tried to claw its back. Naruto suddenly materialized behind it, gave it a quick touch, and then used his recently activated Raijin to swing in a semicircular arc, severing the creature's hands from its arms. As Naruto vanished and then reappeared close to a distant tree, the creature let out a roar of rage. The creature roared and Naruto gave him an irritated look as its hands suddenly reappeared in what appeared to be a painful process. With tremendous speed, the creature charged at Naruto, knocking him off the ground and splintering an overhanging branch. Then, in a display of strength that shattered rocks, it arose and swept Naruto through another tree, racing after him to seize him and slam him to the ground. After that, the creature lifted Naruto and started repeatedly slamming him into an especially resilient oak tree. When the slamming stopped, Naruto looked up at the monster with trepidation. A sharp object slammed into his left arm, causing his eyes to pop open. He screamed, "Ah!" as the monster's razor sharp claw sank into his arm, causing excruciating pain and dripping copious amounts of blood. With a sudden gasp, Naruto hoped that his other would take over, but it never did. That was guaranteed by the overly potent and prematurely administered medication. Naruto tried to concentrate but was unable to do so because the claw's terrible feeling was intensified by its twist. Naruto suppressed a shout. Abruptly, his eyes widened, and he vanished, resurfacing behind the creature with the Raijin in his grasp. The creature started to turn, but as a massive gash was made in its back, it roared. Naruto stumbled to his feet. He squirmed and propped himself up on a tree, as his wound instantly started to heal, probably because of the demon that lived inside of him. The monster glared at Naruto and snarled. It chanted, "Iru, WRR Ril, DIIIEE," as it charged at Naruto once more. A blue flash abruptly blew the monster away as Naruto assumed a vaguely defensive stance, bracing himself for the impact. Naruto watched in agony as the monster collided with a tree and its new attacker jumped back. Naruto yelled, "Sasuke," as he watched his teammate. The Uchiha grinned and said, "Hey, we're even now." Before long, the two of them turned to face the seemingly motionless monster. Sasuke snarled. "Chidori," he exclaimed, jumping forward while his arm was covered in electricity. Then the monster's outstretched arm slammed him into a tree. The creature then seized him and started slamming him into the floor. With a scowl, Naruto swung his blade and charged ahead. The monster tried to counter by raising its other arm, but it was severed. Sasuke included. It swung its remaining arm and growled. Naruto crashed into a tree and fell to the ground. With a deep growl, the monster let Sasuke fall. It started charging, then abruptly stopped and started scanning its surroundings. Incredulously, Naruto watched as the monster started slicing at the air at random, occasionally striking trees but otherwise doing little. He stood up unsteadily and rested his back against a tree. He was startled by a voice behind him asking, "You, okay?" Naruto grinned as he turned around. Sakura. Sakura emerged from the shadows with a genjutsu seal on her hands. Naruto glanced at the monster and nodded. His voice was firm as he said, "You've got to take Sasuke and get out of here." Sakura scowled. "You can't handle," she started. He abruptly charged at the monster once more and said, "I'll hold him off. Get reinforcements. Go." After examining his form for some time, Sakura made her way to Sasuke. After running at the monster, Naruto vanished, only to reappear by its head with the Raijin blade raised. He struck the monster's head with a downward swing. As the Raijin bounced off, Naruto was astounded. Abruptly, the creature spun around and slashed Naruto to the ground. After kicking back against a tree, Naruto vanished. When Naruto's lightning sword was jammed into the monster's stomach, it roared after growling. As the monster started to convulse, Naruto jumped back and twisted the blade before pulling it out. From behind the monster, a massive wave of sand suddenly burst forth, turning into tiny bullets that continued to shoot at Naruto. With wide eyes, Naruto started to teleport around, avoiding bullets wherever he went. He was unaware that the monster was accumulating chakra. The monster screamed, "For VHRRAADENOOUGH," as massive pillars of sand erupted from all sides, enclosing it in a dome of sand. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched as the dome abruptly started to take on the shape of a quadruped. Fearfully, he muttered, "Shuhaku of the sand," and started to perspire. Suddenly, a seal, forming Gaara, appeared from the enormous demon's head. "Niri Tanuki no Jutsu," Gaara exclaimed, abruptly falling asleep as his technique suggested. Sand started to accumulate around Naruto's body, and he cursed. The great demon looked down at Naruto and began to laugh maniacally. With his thumb to his teeth, Naruto bit down as he gazed up at the creature in defiance. The Shuhaku mockingly said, "This, ain't a dream, kid." Naruto threw his gauntlet onto the forest floor after unclasping it. The monster snickered, exposing its fangs. Drawing his bloodied thumb across his bare arm, Naruto did so. Shuhaku was no longer giggling. The edge of Naruto's wrist was where his thumb stopped. Jutsu no Kachiyose. With a gentle thump, Naruto's palm struck the ground, and seals branched out from it, winding into slightly curved tendrils. The seals soon took on the appearance of a sun with far-reaching rays. The encroaching sand abruptly lost its vitality and fell to the ground as ordinary sand would, and the seals started to glow. The enormous one-tailed raccoon demon Shuhaku abruptly started to take on a rather anxious expression. As he watched in frustration as the enormous map of seals started to slow down in its growth, he said in his great rumbling voice, "What are you doing, you stupid kid?" With a growl, Shuhaku gathered sand from the ground and threw it in a sphere. Like the demon's previous attempt, the great sand sphere was on its way to Naruto, his hand still attached to the ground, when all of a sudden it just turned back to regular sand. The demon started charging, snarling in annoyance as it crushed trees that would have made a man look like grass beneath its enormous feet. Naruto grinned as he looked up. A huge glowing winged figure emerged from the sky above, descending in a steep arc and spiraling around the area for a while Shuhaku and Naruto watched incredulously as the trees surrounding Naruto's seal circle suddenly burst into flame. Abruptly, the figure flew off into the distance, then turned around and started flying low. Shuhaku gave Naruto, who was grinning, a ferocious glare as it drew closer. After that, Naruto leapt and skillfully landed on the great figure's shoulder. After that, the figure made an amazing vertical turn before abruptly stopping in midair. The figure was a giant falcon, with enormous wings that radiated an unearthly yet remarkably warm glow, and eyes that were wide and glowing with an ethereal light. The overall light appeared to be as bright as the sun, with each feather on its elegant form seemingly emitting a luminous glow of its own. Between its wings, there appeared to be a revolving halo that emitted light brighter than the sun. The magnificent tail of the falcon extended far below, gracefully floating and weaving in the absence of a wind. In the falcon's ferocious light, Shuhaku appeared to cower, trying to shield his eyes and retreating a step or two at a time, growling. The creature's voice echoed strangely and in various melodious tones from a mouth that didn't seem to be moving. "I am Horus, Lord of the Sky and Divine Harbinger. My eyes art the sun and the moon, my wings encircle the sky, and with my own 2 talons hath taken possession." Naruto was standing on his left shoulder when the great falcon cocked its head slightly in that direction. The falcon asked in a melodic voice, "What hath thee called me to this plane to accomplish?" Naruto shook himself out of his dazed stupor after a moment of shock. "My lord, I am Uzumaki Naruto of the Hidden Leaf. I request your assistance in the dispatching of this demon, for he is attempting to destroy my home," Naruto said with a slight bow. Horus's eyes flashed brightly as he slowly turned to face Shuhaku. With a glare that would have destroyed the continent if appearances could kill, the falcon turned to Shuhaku and said, "Thine heart speaks virtue, and thine soul be worthy. I shalt assist thee in thine plight." Naruto nodded and braced himself as Horus erupted and swam headlong at Shuhaku, wailing with a resounding scream. Shuhaku's eyes grew wide as he raised a massive arm in an effort to repel the falcon. On impact, Horus' talons ripped enormous holes in Shuhaku's arm, causing the enormous demon to roar in annoyance. Shuhaku snarled and opened his mouth, releasing a massive stream of air that was infused with chakra. As though it were a fly, Horus waved it away, and the demon stepped back in surprise, letting Horus resume his charge. Judging pain against a brutal death at the hands of an angry falcon, Shuhaku raised his arm once more. Horus was able to lift the demon by grabbing hold of Shuhaku's thick arm, which had deep talons. With Shuhaku hanging by its arm, Horus soared through the air, heading upwards toward the sun, flapping his powerful wings. Horus abruptly turned around while they were high up, gazing down at the ground, which appeared to be little more than a patch of green with Konaha itself hardly perceptible. Horus abruptly released Shuhaku, allowing it to fall. Horus' head dipped backwards as the halo on his back suddenly started to glow. Incredulously, Naruto saw a slender beam of dazzling light shoot out from Horus's open beak, striking Shuhaku in the chest and speeding the demon's descent while also slowly piercing through its diamond, hard hide. Miles of forest were destroyed and tremors were caused by the demon's ridiculously heavy impact with the ground. Naruto observed that half of Shuhaku's body had turned to glass as they descended, starting from the spot where the beam had struck and working outward. The impact had broken most of it, leaving Shuhaku's stomach with a huge hole. Shuhaku's head was convulsing and bobbing wildly, resembling Gaara's limp frame. That boy is the conduit from which the demon's power is channeled. He is much like you in that sense, according to the Great Falcon. Naruto was startled when he looked up, but he soon recovered. With the halo on its back starting to glow once more, the hawk declared, "I shall destroy this demon, and its carrier, so that it shall not threaten the lives of innocents again." "No, please!" exclaimed Naruto. Seemingly annoyed, the Great Falcon turned. "He is a victim of circumstance, as you said, much like me. I believe that he can repent, I believe that he can change his fate. I believe that everyone can change his or her own fate," said Naruto, staring down at Gaara. Horus remained silent for what felt like an eternity before he seemed to burst out laughing. The falcon said, its great echoing voice warm and humorous, "I would not have it any other way. Your soul is true, Naruto of Uzumaki. Thine mercy will not go unrewarded." Abruptly, Naruto was on the great head of Shuhaku, with the form of Gaara before him. Horus' voice echoed through the forest as he said, "I hath fulfilled mine contract on this, thine plane. Thou art worthy of the contract to which I and my brethren art bound. Godspeed, Naruto of Uzumaki, and may you prosper." As Horus rose to the sky, leaving a golden trail in his wake, Naruto nodded and bowed deeply. Naruto glanced down slowly. In front of Gaara, he knelt. Abruptly, Naruto struck Gaara's face with a powerful blow. Gaara's eyes popped open, and he threw up a shocking amount of blood. What was left of Shuhaku gradually dissolved to the sand from which he had been formed. After a while, Naruto and Gaara ended up on the forest floor, with a massive pile of glass in the distance and a ton of sand all around them. Naruto said, "You know," as he saw Gaara stumble to his feet. "I don't understand the physics of life. I don't understand the basis of our existence here. I can't explain the rationale by which we exist on this good earth," Naruto replied. Gaara appeared to be stumbling in Naruto's direction as he stood on a tree stump, his hands cautious not to touch anything sharp. "But I know that we're all here for a reason. We all exist for a purpose, and no one, I say no one, is born to kill. If there were people born to take the lives of others, then there would be no sense to this world." Gaara had halted. "If you really want to continue your mindless rampaging and murder sprees, then please, by all means, do." Naruto started to move in Gaara's direction. "But know that you are not fulfilling the purpose of which you have been placed here to accomplish." Naruto got close to Gaara. "Know that you are not fated to take the lives of others." Gaara's shoulder was touched by Naruto. "Know that, no matter how much you've been led to believe that you are a tool, that you are a killer, that you are nothing else but a weapon, you can change that fate." Naruto started to leave the area. "Good luck, Gaara of the desert." Naruto bounded into the forest. Naruto pushed himself to the limit as he made his way through the forest. A sudden leap as he approached Konoha's walls sent him sailing over the ruined ramparts. Immediately avoiding the fighting, Naruto made his way through the battlefield toward the arena. Upon entering the ring, he witnessed numerous ninjas engaged in combat. When he looked up at the roof, he saw a red rectangle that was glowing. He jumped in the direction of the main building as his eyes grew wide. When he arrived at the summit, he saw 3 Anbu kneeling in front of the rectangle. He approached the rectangle itself at a leisurely pace. The Anbu took a quick look at him before turning back to the action taking place inside the rectangle. Naruto watched the scene, his throat closing in on itself. As 2 more of the Third's cage bunshin held on tightly to 2 warriors Naruto recognized as the first 2 Hokage, Orochimaru's Kusanagi was impaled into the Third's stomach while a massive apparition of a demonic but familiar looking entity hovered overhead, grasping at a blue glow emanating from Orochimaru. Naruto pulled out his Raijin and stumbled toward the rectangle. He set it on fire and started to cut at the walls of light, but it didn't work. He growled as he swung viciously at the walls. None of the 3 Anbu tried to stop him. The third Hokage turned to Naruto from inside the rectangle, gave him a kind smile, and then mouthed something to Orochimaru. Naruto was abruptly pushed back and blinded by a brilliant burst of light. He turned back to see the third's body lying in front of an enraged Orochimaru who appeared to be yelling in a fit of wrath. Not having the same seal on his stomach, Naruto focused on the third's corpse. "Old man!" he exclaimed, the tears streaming down his face. He sanged his hands and repeatedly smacked the wall. The wall had vanished, he realized abruptly. He raised his head, snarled, and hurled a kunai into the air before vanishing. A kunai flashed in front of Orochimaru's face as he growled in rage while being held up by a boy with 6 arms. The 6-armed boy was pushed into Naruto's swing by Orochimaru, who snarled and kicked back from his back, separating his torso from his legs. Orochimaru instantly collapsed under a rather large-looking man. Another pair of kunai were drawn by Naruto, but sound waves deflected them in midair. 2 of Orochimaru's bodyguards, a white-headed boy with an odd lump on his back and a red-headed girl, started attacking. After landing on a nearby roof, they started fighting. The white-haired boy charged at Naruto with 2 kunai drawn while the girl formed some seals. Naruto slashed and ducked, but his opponent leapt. The boy had clearly forgotten about the Anbu on the roof, including the captain, so his leap was in vain. The Anbu captain's hand suddenly extended a huge icicle, impaling the boy. Without delay, Naruto rushed towards the girl, disrupting her seals and spinning into a roundhouse. In a show of aerial acrobatics, he kicked her up and then somersaulted, kicking her back down. His Raijin held out as he twisted in midair and started to dive, bomb down. The Anbu captain muttered, "Naruto, that's enough," and abruptly dragged the girl aside. After his attack, Naruto recovered swiftly, falling to the ground and instantly collapsing to his knees. With the sun starting to set and the sky turning a vivid crimson. Yellow, tears streamed down his cheeks. Naruto woke up from his sleep and gazed out his window, his eyes red with tears and his face solemn. Rain was falling, and quite a bit of it. Naruto turned to face his table, where 4 syringes were neatly arranged on a sheet of pure white. Because of the trauma of the events, he had feared that his ID would surface, but he had not. The syringe drug was working effectively, but even at the back of his mind, Naruto couldn't shake a sense of emptiness and intense sadness. After finishing his daily tasks, Naruto opened his cupboard, took out an outfit in the deepest shade of black, and put it on slowly. Naruto strolled slowly to his windowsill while observing the numerous black people carrying umbrellas as they started to gather outside their houses and move in the same general direction. He nearly burst into tears once more. There was only one person who truly cared about him enough to risk his life to save him. After taking a pure, unadulterated white flower out of a crystalline glass and gazing at it for a while, Naruto went to his house's entrance and got his own black umbrella. Even though practically every Konaha resident was present, the funeral procession was silent. Not a single squeak was heard, and all eyes were fixed on the coffin containing their revered leader, who had been killed by his own apprentice. His face appeared to be at peace despite the fact that his soul was destined to serve as the death god's vassal for all eternity. The irony of the situation astounded Naruto. That same Shinigami had already received the souls of 2 Hokage. It was a very peculiar thing to ponder. The speaker, an elderly council member named Mitokado Homura, quickly resigned, his aged face displaying a sorrow that few could understand and even fewer could identify. As they saw their leader's face, possibly for the last time, the assembled group stood up and started to pass the lacquered teak coffin, some sobbing and others almost. As the rain increased, they laid white flowers on his coffin. Naruto reflected on the past and recalled how the old man had supported him during his hardships, including his early contact phobia and the trials of being a demon carrier. When Naruto arrived at the coffin, he started to cry bitterly as he looked at his mentor and best friend for what might have been the last time. He placed his flower on top of the many that were already there and continued to walk past, his tears blending with the rain. Naruto sat on his couch for the remainder of the day, gazing out the window and picking up books or scrolls at random, only to put them back where he had found them. So much had transpired in such a short period of time. As lightning blazed across the gray, bleak sky, illuminating it in a great white flash and creating odd shadows on Naruto's dark room, he sipped from a cup of warm water. For the first time, Naruto noticed a crack on the third's stony face as he looked languidly up at the Hokage monument. A warning of bad things to come, a bad omen. Bad, was Naruto's guess for the recent events. 3 piercing knocks on Naruto's door startled him out of his reverie. He got up and walked steadily toward the door. To his surprise, Jariah was inside when he opened it. The Sannin said, "Hey, kid." His phony smile was a reflection of the amount of work he was attempting to do. Naruto let him in by opening the door wider. After admiring his surroundings for some time, Jariah sat down on a wooden chair across from Naruto's sofa. With a warm smile, Naruto placed a cup of hot tea from a pot next to his seat on the small table in front of him and asked, "So, Jariah, what can I do for you?" After picking it up and taking a sip, Jariah turned to face Naruto gravely. The white-haired man poured milk from a small jug into his tea and said, "Naruto, how'd you like to go on a trip with me?" Naruto appeared perplexed. While drinking his own cup of water, he questioned, "What for?" "Konaha is low on troops and shinobi right now, because of the sound attack, and we've heard rumors of Iwagakure acting up. Right now we're going to have to depend on rain and grass for protection, and I doubt they'll lend too many of their forces to us." Jariah paused and gulped down his now milk. Naruto looked out the window a little and nodded. With a small sip of his tea, Jariah remarked, "Well, suffice to say, we're in desperate need of skilled ninja to fill up the voids of those many deceased ones, and I know someone that could help." Once more, Naruto nodded. He inquired, "Who is this person?" Jariah grinned. Jariah concluded, grinning widely, "The third legendary Sannin, Tsunade." 3 sharp knocks came from outside his door, and Naruto leapt to his feet. Groggily, Naruto sat up and gazed at his bedside alarm clock. Then he scowled a little as he turned back to the door. Another set of knocks rang out, and he got up and started to move toward his door. "Naruto, are you ready?" a giddy Jariah exclaimed from a narrow opening between the wall and the now slightly opened door. As Jariah entered, Naruto sighed and opened the door. He settled himself on an overstuffed sofa across from the window, his bag strewn haphazardly next to it. Naruto said, "Yes, but you're rather early," as he sauntered to his kitchen, where a little bowl of fruit was resting. After picking up an apple, he went to Jiraiya's seat, where he was reading a little book that Naruto knew to be his own. Jariah blurted out, "Huh? Naruto, you need to read something more productive. This stuff is so," before going silent. Naruto appeared perplexed. Jariah put the book back on his table and looked up at a still, mysterious Naruto, finishing, "Boring. Well, it's really hard for me to sneak any books on more exciting jutsu out," and started Naruto. Jariah started to wildly wave his arms. No, I mean something like this," Jariah exclaimed, holding out an orange book with a large red prohibition sign on the back and a rather shoddily drawn picture on the front. Naruto studied it for a long time. Taking a bag from outside his room, Naruto said, "It's for people over 18, therefore it's classified under smut, Jariah." He then proceeded to his crafting table. Jariah let out a gasp. "It's smut written by me," he exclaimed, his voice full of incredulity. After shaking his head, Naruto set about organizing his supplies according to size, putting bundles of kunai into different pockets inside and outside his bag. As Naruto entered the restroom, Jariah had already taken another book off the shelf next to his own and started reading, sighing as he tossed it onto the seat next to his own and shaking his head as he turned the pages. Soon after, Naruto appeared in his typical attire, which consists of a loose white shirt, black pants, and his knee and wrist guards. In the same motion, he grabbed his raijin and clipped it to his belt, strapped his pouches around his waist, and hefted his bag while slinging his arms neatly through. Then he slid his 2 heavy swords down through the space between his back and his bag and strapped them to his back. Jariah stood up and remarked, "You know, restricted books might contain violent content. Not ones with pictures of a girl being chased by a guy on the front, and besides, I happen to know that book. Kakashi reads it like it was some sort of holy book. Now, can we go?" said Naruto, pointing to the front door. Jariah stood with a frown. Naruto questioned why he had been selected to go on such a significant mission with Jariah out of all the others. Aside from a few glimpses of Tsunade in a photograph, he had never even met her. Wouldn't one of her trained individuals be more suitable? Although it was acknowledged that medical procedures were never the same after she entered the field, some of which had been adopted by other countries, she didn't actually take on many apprentices. He had visited Ichiraku Ramen with Jariah, who was engaged in a lively discussion with Tucci, the stand owner, about whether to pair Junko with Barizo or Rado. Although he was still far from being a ramen enthusiast, Naruto had started to frequent the stand after Jariah had brought him there for the first time. He typically ordered something light, like soup or dry ramen. As Jiraiya and Tucci continued their banter, which was quickly reaching an NC.16 level, Naruto sighed and took a slow sip of his tea without paying attention. Ayame's question, "You want anything else?" startled Naruto out of his reverie. After shaking his head, Naruto took another sip of his tea. She smiled at Naruto and rested on the counter, asking again, "How long will you be gone?" Naruto said, "I don't really know." Ayame smiled and said, "Remember to come by when you're back." Naruto grinned. As the great gates of Konaha closed behind him, Naruto turned numbly to face the wide stretch of road in front of him. Jiraiya, chatting merrily with a guard, started to walk as the white-haired man stepped aside to join him. Jiraiya clearly emphasized his name and the title that came before it when he said, "Don't worry, my boy. This trip won't be useless for you, as I, the all-powerful Toad Ninja Jariah, have something to teach you." Jariah was hopping on one foot and posing strangely when Naruto turned to face him. To Jiraiya's annoyance, he continued walking forward. "Hey, I'm serious here. Listen. Hey!" exclaimed Jariah as she hurried for Naruto's attention. Naruto's eyes widened as he turned to face Jariah, who was running toward him while holding a pulsing blue sphere of chakra in his outstretched arm. "Sakashi Magician Tonyu," Naruto muttered as he grabbed Jiraiya's wrist, slammed his elbow up with his palm, and flipped him rather heavily toward a large rock. To Naruto's surprise, Jiraiya's blue sphere started grinding into the rock right away. With a frustrated expression on his face, Jariah fell to a heap beneath the rock and looked up. What was that for? He outraged. Naruto walked over to examine the hole created by Jiraiya's Rasengan and exclaimed, "Well, one really doesn't stand there waiting for painful death if one sees a great bulky man rushing at him with a Rasengan swirling in his hand, does he?" Jariah said, dusting himself off and flapping his arms slightly. "Oh, you know about the Rasengan? Good, then I don't need to explain its origins." Naruto poked lightly around the tiny hole made by the blue sphere and said, "Yeah, I know it from somewhere. I think I read about it, or something." To Naruto's surprise, Jiraiya emerged from behind him and guided him behind the rock. In a word, the rock's back had been completely destroyed. A huge hole that neatly leads to the smaller one. Overall, the amount of rock remaining in the object was quite small. Jariah slapped Naruto's back roughly and said, "Abstract art at its most abstract, hee." As they strolled, Jariah grinned and threw Naruto a tiny yellow balloon. As Jariah watched Naruto start his task, she said, "Use your chakra to burst that." The balloon burst into bright yellow fragments and light blue chakra as Naruto squinted. Jariah watched, clearly impressed. Jariah took another balloon from his bag and remarked, "That was fast." He held it in his hand and said, "This one's filled with water. I want you to do this." For a minute or so, nothing happened, so Naruto watched. Jariah burst out laughing as Naruto's eyes widened in realization. He handed the ball to an excited Naruto, who started focusing on the balloon right away, and asked, "Got it?" A sudden explosion behind him startled Jariah as he stepped forward a little. He turned to find his balloon in ruins and Naruto a little wet. Jariah handed Naruto another balloon and remarked, "That was fast too." "Thank goodness I made a lot," the white-haired man muttered, turning to look at his backpack. As they approached a sizable township, Jariah remarked, "Okay, Naruto, it's time for a rest." With a green balloon in his outstretched hand, Naruto looked up. He appeared somewhat exhausted, but not from the unimpressive trek from Konoha's gates. Jariah scowled. Snatching the balloon from Naruto's feeble hand, Jariah muttered, "I'm teaching you this technique for it to be of some use to you, not for you to commit suicide from chakra exhaustion." Naruto stumbled a little and found it difficult to maintain a straight posture as he made a feeble attempt to grab the balloon. Jariah guided him through several congested areas and into a modest-looking hotel building. Jariah knocked on the hard teak wood counter, which was clearly worn from the numerous scratches on its surface. "Room for two, please." His coins were quickly gathered and replaced with a key that was fastened to a keychain that bore the inscription, "Room 15." The woman behind the counter said, "Second floor, third from the right," with a faint smile. Following the lady's instructions, Jariah nudged Naruto up the stairs and into room 15, a reasonably large space with two beds apart and a wooden desk. Naruto shook himself awake and sat down on a bed. Jariah had set his backpack in front of Naruto and opened it to reveal a small, unopened packet of shriveled balloons and a large quantity of water balloons. Jariah appeared to be leaving through the door as Naruto glanced up at her. He said, "Going out to gather information on Tsunade. Heim, hee. However, the final laugh suggested that he had more naughty plans. The door opened again as Naruto sighed and picked up a balloon. And don't blow the room up just yet, Jariah said, dipping his head back into the room and then vanishing again. Shaking his head, Naruto focused once more on shaping the chakra before the balloon exploded once more, soaking his bed and the surrounding area in water. Naruto moaned and scowled. He was the wrong person to teach such a complex technique that required extraordinary chakra control, wasn't he? Even though Jariah was aware of his disability, she still decided to teach him this rather than a taijutsu or something that only required a basic understanding of chakra molding. With a sigh, Naruto pulled out another sphere and tried to focus once more. Glancing around, Naruto groaned at the sight of the whole wet region. He picked up a piece of his most recent attempt at Jiraiya's second step, and hoped it would dry. A loud knocking came from the door, and Naruto looked up abruptly. He stood up and dusted himself off, saying, "Back so soon?" He was confronted by a Sharingan as soon as he opened the door. "I must ask you to accompany me, Naruto, even though I'm not who you expected," the Sharingan's owner, a man wearing a black coat adorned with red clouds, said. A huge bandaged blade smashed through the door as Naruto's eyes widened and he somersaulted back. The Sharingan wielder entered the room right after a man with a strange-looking face and blue skin. By that point, Naruto had switched into battle-ready mode and was watching them both closely. With an almost imperceptible hint of irritation in his voice, the Sharingan wielder said, "Did you really have to do that? It's going to draw attention." His blue-skinned companion, who was wearing similar clothes, gave a loud snort while glancing around the room. Then Naruto slowly drew his Raijin and activated it. Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame rank missing nin of the leaf and mist, respectively, he said. The red-black eyes of Uchiha Itachi, the Sharingan wielder, shifted a little. In a nearly monotone voice, he said, "So, Uzumaki Naruto, you know of us. I do not presume to know if you understand our mission." Kisame, his partner, grinned broadly as he eyed Naruto's Raijin and said, "Hey, kid, nice sword." Naruto's gaze shifted between the two individuals. Trying to remain calm, Naruto uttered, "Perhaps I do understand." Itachi took a tiny step forward and said, "Please do not try to stall for Jiraiya-sama." Throwing several kunai around, Naruto sprang into action. He threw one at Itachi, who easily sidestepped and returned the throw. After vanishing, Naruto abruptly reappeared close to Itachi's location and swung his blade at him. Itachi made a clean dodge and swung a kunai at Naruto, starting a barrage of blows that Naruto struggled to avoid. Naruto vanished and resurfaced close to one of the kunai, then vanished right away and reappeared close to Itachi in a downward swipe that was once more avoided. Itachi continued his annoying monotone as he said, "Hiraishin no jutsu, impressive, Naruto." After reappearing beside Itachi, Naruto was kicked into a wall nearby. As he stood up, he spat out some blood and gazed up at the Sharingan wielder incredulously. With half of his face hidden by shadows, Itachi's eyes seemed to glow as he said, "You think that I cannot track your moves with my Sharingan, you were right. But appearing in the exact same place thrice would mean your death, if I meant to kill you." Itachi ran in Naruto's direction, but he vanished and reappeared behind him. His blade was aimed directly at Itachi's head, but his wrist was kicked up, and a leg struck his stomach, sending him flying back a significant distance into a wall on the other side and creating some cracks in the concrete. Perhaps unworthy of a S-ranked criminal, Itachi seemed to be enjoying his victory when he said, "Swords are an unwieldy companion at close range." Naruto muttered, "You talk too much." He teleported alongside Itachi once more, but he quickly left after avoiding a kick and reappeared at his side, his blade once more swiftly approaching Itachi. Itachi turned and swung once more, but Naruto vanished once more and reappeared behind the laughing Kisame, where a kunai had landed. Turning on his feet, the man shark swung his great sword and said, "You think I'm less dangerous than the girly dot man?" "I'm disappointed," as he started to run across the room, blood streaming from his mouth. Naruto could only watch in abstract horror as a cry from behind the door suddenly erupted, accompanied by a loud noise, "Chidori."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.